An exhausted salaryman checks his watch, noting the late hour and the end of another grueling day. He reflects on his 2 years at a black company, a place of endless, unpaid overtime. He feels a sudden wave of dizziness, a physical symptom of his complete and utter burnout. With a weary sigh, he continues his lonely walk home through the dark city streets. He recalls a night just like this one, the fateful evening he first met his cherished companion. Gazing at the imposing apartment building, he feels a sense of urgency to get home. The nameplate on his door identifies him as Haruka Takumi. With tired movements, he fumbles for his keys, ready to finally end the long day. The sound of the lock turning announces his arrival to the one waiting inside. He calls out his return as he hears the frantic scratching of paws from an inner door. He tells his energetic friend to wait a moment, promising to open the door right away. Kicking off his dress shoes, he finally sheds the last remnants of his oppressive job. An impossibly cute, fluffy white dog leaps up, its entire body wiggling with pure joy. His tired expression melts into a warm smile as he asks his small companion if he's been good. He reveals a special treat, his dog's favorite sausage, which he brought home just for him. He kneels beside his dog, Leo, watching him happily enjoy the special gift. He reflects that naming his dog Leo on a whim has become a cherished memory. As Leo finishes his treat, Takumi decides it's time for his own meager bento dinner. A much stronger wave of vertigo suddenly hits him, his vision blurring as Leo whines in concern. He reaches out a hand to steady himself, wondering if this violent shaking is an earthquake. He realizes with dawning horror that it is not the room that is shaking, but himself. The world turns upside down as he collapses, Leo's frantic barks fading as he loses consciousness. He awakens to the sight of a forest canopy, groggily recognizing the sound of Leo's barking. He finds himself lying not on his apartment floor, but on a bed of soft, unfamiliar grass. Sitting up, he calls for Leo, bewildered by the vast wilderness and distant mountains. A massive white muzzle suddenly appears inches from his face, startling him into silence. He recoils in terror, shouting out in confusion at the enormous, unfamiliar creature. A colossal white wolf stands over him, and he can only stammer, "A wolf!" in disbelief. He tries to convince himself it's a dream, as a wolf of such impossible size cannot be real. The giant wolf lowers its head, its nose coming so close he can feel its breath on his skin. He squeezes his eyes shut, bracing for the worst, absolutely certain he is about to be eaten. Instead of sharp teeth, a large wet tongue gives him a sloppy but affectionate lick on the cheek. He opens his eyes, stunned into silence by the gentle gesture and the creature's soft whimper. In the reflection of his own wide eye, he sees the wolf's familiar, gentle expression. A fragile hope blossoms as he points a trembling finger, asking if this creature could be his Leo. He takes in the sight of the wolf's powerful paws, now armed with long, sharp claws. He marvels at the creature's thick coat of pure, shimmering white fur. The wolf looks at him with the same soft, adoring eyes that he has always known. He strokes the wolf's fur, remarking that though Leo is male, he has grown quite handsome. Sitting beside the massive creature, he laughs, telling his companion how incredibly big he has become. He begins to ponder a new mystery, remembering his dog's strange, almost human-like intelligence. He recalls how Leo always seemed to understand his words with perfect clarity. He wonders if this fantastical growth is just another bizarre feature of the dream he's trapped in. He tests his theory with a playful wink, asking if the wolf understands his words about getting a ride. He decides to first figure out where they are before he tries to ride his newly gigantic friend. He sits atop Leo's broad back as the great wolf carries him deeper into the forest. After some time, he dismounts, his office shoes sinking into the soft, grassy earth. He walks beside his colossal companion, dwarfed by the creature's sheer size and the towering trees. He looks around, realizing they are lost in what seems to be an endless, primordial forest. The dense canopy of the ancient trees blocks out most of the sky, creating a dim, green world. From an overhead view, the man and his giant wolf are but small figures in a vast wilderness. A flicker of worry crosses his face as he contemplates the very real danger of their situation. His throat is parched, and he wonders aloud to Leo if there might be a river nearby. Leo immediately understands, turning and leading him with purpose down a steep, wooded slope. He is overjoyed as Leo leads him to a sparkling river, praising his amazing companion. His face is a picture of pure relief and gratitude for the cool, life-saving water. He kneels by the rocky shore, eager to finally quench his overwhelming thirst. He cups the clear water in his hands and drinks deeply, the simple act of profound relief. He sits down to rest by the riverbank, Leo panting happily at his side. Leo rests his massive head on his lap, and he fondly recalls when he could hold his entire body. He laughs, joking that even just Leo's head is heavy now, before apologizing for teasing a girl. Looking up at the trees, he wonders what they will do now, how they will survive. He rests his hand on Leo's head, trying to process the fact that he is in an unknown forest. He covers his face in despair, admitting to himself that he has no survival skills whatsoever. Leaning against Leo's warm, furry side, he finds a moment of peace, remarking on the fresh air. The sun sparkles on the clear water, and he can't remember the last time he felt so relaxed. He apologizes to Leo, confessing that he was always too busy with work to be a good owner. He is lost in a moment of quiet reflection, his expression somber as he contemplates his past. Leo's body suddenly goes rigid, a low, menacing growl rumbling deep in his chest. As Leo's hackles rise, Takumi jumps to his feet, asking his partner what's wrong. He follows Leo's intense gaze, sensing that something is moving through the trees. A hulking bipedal pigman stomps into the clearing, its brutish form shaking the ground. He stares in disbelief as Leo growls defensively at the pig that is walking on two legs. His eyes are wide with shock, his mind struggling to comprehend the monstrous sight. A memory from his old life clicks into place. He recognizes the creature from video games. As the orc raises its weapon, he shouts its name and cries out for Leo in alarm. Leo becomes a white blur of righteous fury, launching himself at the monster without hesitation. After the battle, Leo sits contentedly, chewing on the orc's severed and bandaged arm. With a look of horrified fascination, Takumi asks his companion if he's really going to eat that. Leo happily offers the gruesome trophy to him, as if inviting him to share in the spoils. Takumi recoils, his expression a mixture of disgust and bewildered amusement. With a strained, weary smile, he decides he has no choice but to accept his new, bizarre reality. Later, chunks of meat, presumably from the orc, sizzle and pop over a roaring campfire. Leo waits patiently for his meal, his tail wagging with such force that flowers seem to bloom around him. As Takumi presents a cooked skewer, Leo's eyes sparkle with unrestrained, drooling delight. With a deep breath to steady his nerves, Takumi takes his first bite of the roasted monster meat. Leo watches him intently, waiting for his owner's verdict on their first shared meal. His eyes widen in surprise as he discovers that the meat is delicious, tasting just like pork. With their hunger sated, they look to the clear sky, ready to plan their next move. He asks his companion for ideas on how to escape the forest, dusting off his trousers. He immediately catches himself, smiling sheepishly as he admits Leo probably doesn't know. He decides on a classic survival strategy, proposing that they follow the river downstream. As they walk along the riverbank, he notes that Leo seems to be in a very good mood. He stops suddenly, his head tilted as a faint, unfamiliar sound reaches his ears. His eyes widen as he hears it again, the sound now clearer and more distinct. He realizes it's a human voice and urges Leo to hurry, hoping it's their way out. They race through the forest, leaves scattering in their wake as they run toward the sound. He spots the source of the cries, a young woman cornered by another orc screaming for help. The blonde-haired woman is frozen in terror, her screams echoing as the monster looms over her. Spotting a charging orc, Takumi cries out his companion's name in alarm. In a flash of white fur, Leo intercepts the monster's arm with his powerful jaws. The orc is thrown backward as the young woman Clea watches from the ground. Takumi gives Leo a thumbs up, telling him he did a fantastic job. He rushes to Clea's side, asking if she is all right. She confirms she is. She looks up at her rescuer, her expression a mixture of shock and gratitude. Takumi is momentarily stunned by her beauty, blushing as Leo gives him a sidelong glance. She asks if something is wrong. He apologizes, admitting he was captivated by her. She thanks him for his help, then asks if the silver fenrir is his familiar. The strange terms familiar and silver fenrir leave both Takumi and Leo confused. Takumi realizes the words monster and familiar are only familiar from his video games. Clea is aghast that he doesn't know what a monster or a familiar is. He asks her to explain what a silver fenrir is. He cheerfully confirms that his partner is indeed the legendary creature. Clea tries to reconcile this impossible fact with the legends she knows. She is utterly amazed that he has tamed a silver fenrir. It is said to be the strongest monster, one that never submits to humans. Takumi teasingly asks his proud wolf if he truly is the strongest. Clea recounts the legends of the fenrir's speed, fire breath, and powerful claws. She continues, speaking of its inescapable fangs and its absolute might. Its noble image, she explains, is even used as the royal crest. She looks at him, her eyes wide with a sense of wonder. Takumi proudly declares that this is Leo, his partner, regardless of any legends. She is still amazed, but he insists he's just an ordinary person. Clea smiles, shaking her head in disbelief. She insists that no ordinary person could befriend a silver fenrir. She is certain that he must be a person of great renown. He dismisses her assumption and asks for her name. He places a hand on his chest, introducing himself as Haruka Takumi. She has never heard the name, and he jokes that it proves he's not famous. Leo watches a butterfly, reminding Takumi of his own lapse in manners. He realizes with a smile that he never asked for her name. She accepts his apology, admitting her own rudeness in not introducing herself. She performs a perfect curtsy, presenting herself as Clea Revolt. She thanks him once more for saving her from a dangerous situation. Takumi is again struck by her grace and beauty. He stammers her name and she warmly asks him to call her Clea. He agrees, asking her to call him Takumi in return, which she accepts. He asked why she was in the forest. She was searching for medicinal herbs. An orc appeared, she explains, and her terrified horse ran away. She then turns the question to him, asking why he is there. He sighs, unsure how to even begin to explain his impossible situation. He tells her that he simply woke up in this very forest. He and Leo have been wandering aimlessly ever since. Clea listens to his incredible story with a thoughtful expression. She wonders how he could have just appeared. He admits he doesn't know. She ponders their shared predicament, both of them lost in the woods. She hesitantly addresses him, about to ask for a favor. She asks if he would be willing to help her, and he readily agrees. Her face breaks into a brilliant, grateful smile. The sky is visible through the dense canopy of the ancient forest. They begin their search for the herb along the winding riverbank. He wonders if the plants around him could be the ramogi they seek. Takumi kneels in the tall grass, carefully examining the local flora. Clea had asked for his help, her need for the herb overriding her fear. The ramogi, she explained, is a fever-reducing herb that grows by the river. They have searched for a long time, but still haven't found anything. Takumi stretches, his body aching from the long walk. They take a short, welcome break by the water's edge. Exhausted, he slumps to the ground, suggesting they rest for a while. As he places his hand on the earth, a tiny sprout miraculously appears. The small plant grows with impossible speed before his astonished eyes. In a matter of seconds, it blossoms into a full-sized herb. He stares at the plant, completely stunned by its sudden appearance. He recognizes it as the ramogi, which seems to have grown from nothing. He excitedly calls out to Clea, telling her that he has found it. He points to the plant, confirming that this is the one they were looking for. The three of them, Takumi, Clea, and Leo, look on in shared amazement. Clea confirms that it is indeed ramogi, and he is relieved they finally found it. She thanks him profusely, her voice filled with sincere gratitude. She carefully plucks the precious, life-saving herb from the ground. She clutches it tightly in her hand, her mission finally complete. A look of pure joy and relief spreads across her face. She thanks him again. He says he is glad that he could help her. Now they just need to return, but she laments that her horse is gone. Leo lets out a soft growl, getting Takumi's attention. The massive white wolf takes a deliberate step forward. He gracefully lowers his body to the ground, offering them a ride. Takumi asks if Leo is offering to carry them. Leo barks in confirmation. He relays the offer to a wide-eyed and astonished Clea. Clea gulps, a mixture of awe and trepidation on her face. She formally accepts the offer from Leo-sama, who responds with a bark. They ride on Leo's back, his powerful legs carrying them swiftly. Their hair blows in the wind as they speed through the forest. Takumi wonders aloud if Leo even knows where they are going. They emerge from the dense forest into a wide, open clearing. Leo gallops across a vast plain of rolling hills as Clea gives directions. Takumi looks out at the unfamiliar, sprawling landscape. As far as the eye can see, there is nothing but open country. He realizes that a place like this could not possibly exist in Japan. He finally accepts the truth. This is another world. He ponders the impossible reality of his situation as they ride on. As they approach a grand gate, Clea asks him to have Leo stop. They come to a halt before a magnificent estate patrolled by armored guards. A guard recognizes Clea, shouting in relief that she is safe. His relief quickly turns to alarm as he sees the colossal wolf. Clea calmly instructs the guard to treat Takumi as an important guest. With effortless grace, they dismount from Leo's broad back. Takumi's feet touch the ground of this strange new place. They walk through the now open gates, their incredible journey just beginning. The grand wrought iron gates swing open with a heavy, metallic clang. Clea invites Takumi forward, towards the magnificent stone mansion before them. Takumi is awestruck by the sheer size, murmuring that it's incredible. An older man in a butler's uniform bursts out, calling frantically for Lady Clea. Clea rushes up the steps to meet him, calling out his name. Sebastian! The butler expresses his profound relief that she is safe and unharmed. Clea urgently asks him about the condition of someone named Tilla. Sebastian explains that Tilla is still confined to bed with a high fever. This makes Takumi realize that Clea's family member must be very ill. Sebastian continues, stating that they lack any effective medicine for her condition. Clea confirms that this is precisely why she ventured into the forest alone. She recounts how an orc attacked her, but Takumi thankfully came to her rescue. Sebastian is shocked to hear she was attacked by an orc. He turns to Takumi and offers a deep, formal bow of gratitude. He introduces himself as Sebastian, the butler of the Revolt family household. Takumi insists he didn't do much, giving all the credit to Leo. Sebastian's professional gaze falls on the massive wolf, his eyes widening. He whispers in disbelief, recognizing the creature as a familiar. He struggles to comprehend, wondering if this familiar could possibly be. Clea places a hand on Leo's fur, confirming his suspicions. She explains that she witnessed Leo-sama tear apart the orc with his claws. She declares with certainty that he is a silver fenrir. Sebastian is thunderstruck, unable to believe he is seeing a living legend. He murmurs that the silver fenrir is an inviolable symbol of their nation. It is a legendary creature that is said to never submit to humans. Takumi clarifies that he doesn't see Leo as a subordinate, but his partner. He explains that he simply found Leo abandoned a few years ago. Sebastian is left speechless, trying to process the idea of finding a silver fenrir. Clea adds that silver fenrirs cherish their families, so finding one alone is unheard of. Takumi is surprised to learn this new information about his companion. Sebastian's sharp eyes study Takumi, wondering what kind of person he is. Leo looks back at the butler with a gentle, slightly curious expression. Clea decides they can discuss Takumi's story in detail later on. She brings the conversation back to Tilla, announcing Takumi found the Ramogi herb. Sebastian is shocked again, taking the precious herb from her with reverence. He decides to welcome their guest properly before dealing with the medicine. He turns to Takumi, ready to lead him into the grand estate. He formally addresses him as Takumi-sama and beckons him to follow. Clea also encourages him, saying they should go inside. Takumi is overwhelmed, thinking he's never been welcomed to such a grand place. As they enter, a breathtaking sight greets him in the grand hall. An entire legion of maids and footmen are lined up perfectly. They all bow in unison, welcoming their lady home with a formal greeting. Takumi is stunned, his eyes wide with disbelief at the grand reception. He silently notes the incredible number of staff present in the hall. He estimates there must be at least 20 people in the receiving line. Clea hands the Ramogi to Sebastian, entrusting him with its preparation. She then introduces Takumi to the staff as her benefactor and savior. She instructs everyone to treat him with the utmost care and respect. Two maids, a brunette and a redhead, step forward to attend to him. The brunette introduces herself as Layla, and the redhead introduces herself as Gerda. They both thank him profusely for saving Lady Clea. A flustered Takumi stammers his thanks and says it's a pleasure to meet them. The red-headed maid Gerda is visibly nervous, her hands clasped tightly. Takumi, feeling awkward, asks if they can just treat him casually. The sheer opulence of the entrance hall is almost too much to take in. He is awed by the grand staircase and ornate decorations. He thinks that being overwhelmed by the maids is one thing, but this is incredible. He is completely dazzled by the luxuriousness of his surroundings. Clea tells Takumi she is going to check on her sister Tilla. She instructs Layla and Gerda to ensure they don't neglect their guest. The two maids promise to do their best to serve him well. Clea gracefully ascends the grand staircase, her long hair flowing behind her. Takumi watches her go, thinking what a kind person she is. The maids then guide Takumi and Leo down a lavishly decorated corridor. Takumi asks if it's all right for Leo to be inside with him. Layla assures him the guest room is more than spacious enough for them. Gerda agrees enthusiastically, telling him it will be fine. Takumi accepts their offer and asks them to lead the way. They arrive at a guest room larger than his entire apartment. The maids ask him to wait there while they prepare some refreshments. They ask what they should bring for Leo-sama to drink. Takumi almost defaults to Japanese custom, asking for water or milk. He quickly catches himself, flustered by his own mistake. He thinks it must be part of his Japanese nature to be so unassuming. He sinks into a plush sofa, petting Leo's soft, warm fur. He feels that as long as Leo is calm, he must be safe. He reflects on the surreal situation, wondering if this is all a dream. Leo looks up at him, letting out a questioning whine. Takumi muses that even if it's a dream, Leo's transformation is unbelievable. A polite knock at the door interrupts his thoughts. The two maids, Layla and Gerda, re-enter with a tea service. Layla gracefully pours Takumi a cup of tea, which he accepts gratefully. Meanwhile, Gerda nervously approaches Leo with a large bowl of water. Takumi cheerfully tells Leo to drink the water properly. As Leo laps at the water, Gerda yelps and jumps back in fright. The young maid is still visibly terrified of the giant wolf. Takumi, feeling responsible, apologizes for Leo's intimidating presence. Layla gently admonishes Gerda for her unprofessional display of fear. She clarifies that she wasn't scolding, but she can tell Leo isn't hostile. She finds Leo rather cute, noting how he drank gently to avoid scaring Gerda. Takumi laughs warmly, agreeing wholeheartedly with her assessment. He adds that Leo is a cute girl, just like the blushing Gerda. Gerda is completely stunned, whispering in disbelief that he called her cute. The unexpected compliment leaves her flustered and overjoyed. Layla smirks, remarking that Takumi is quite the smooth talker. Just then, Clea and Sebastian return to the room. Takumi immediately asks about her sister's condition. Clea explains that Tilla's condition is unchanged from when she left for the forest. However, she now has hope, as they are preparing the Ramogi medicine. Takumi explains that the Leo he knew had grown much larger. Clea notes that a silver fenrir being large is perfectly normal. Takumi clarifies that Leo was originally a dog small enough to hold. Clea asks if this is true, and Takumi confirms he found Leo abandoned. He insists that his current size and form are completely different now. He presents his theory. Leo must have transformed into a silver fenrir. Clea is perplexed, having never heard of such a transformation before. Takumi hesitates, admitting the rest of his story is hard to say. Clea listens as he finally reveals his impossible secret. He explains this is another world, where orcs are not just myths. Clea quietly repeats his words, processing the incredible information. Takumi offers a wry smile, understanding her disbelief is natural. He takes a steadying sip of tea before continuing his explanation. He recalls stories where travelers to other worlds gain special powers. This, he theorizes, might be the reason for Leo's transformation. His small dog was granted a power that turned him into a fenrir. Takumi scratches Leo's head, his companion's ear twitching in response. Clea stares, a look of dawning comprehension on her face. Sebastian turns to Clea, asking for her judgment on the story. Clea smiles warmly, deciding to place her trust in Takumi. Sebastian accepts his lady's decision with a knowing look. The maids Layla and Gerda voice their own agreement and trust. Takumi is visibly moved by their immediate and total acceptance. He thanks Clea sincerely for believing his incredible tale. Now that the truth is out, Clea moves on to practical matters. She invites him to stay at the villa, knowing he has nowhere else to go. Takumi is surprised, asking if she is sure it's okay. Clea insists, adding that her sister Tilla will want to thank him. Takumi gratefully accepts her offer, bowing his head in thanks. The maids are instructed to prepare a room for their new guest. Takumi asks about Tilla's medicine, learning it won't be ready until tomorrow. Clea assures him the single sprig he found was more than enough. Leo nudges the leftover herbs and Clea muses that he might be hungry. She decides to have the chefs prepare a welcome party for them. Takumi is flustered, insisting that such a celebration isn't necessary. Clea asks what Leo eats, and Takumi wonders if sausages exist here. Clea confirms that they do, much to Takumi's relief. He joyfully tells Leo that his favorite treat is on the menu. The massive wolf nearly tackles him in a fit of happy excitement. In the commotion, Takumi stumbles and drops the Ramogi sprigs. He bends down to pick up the fallen medicinal herbs. He looks at them, noticing something is suddenly very different. He shows the herbs to Clea, who looks on in confusion. They both realize the fresh herbs have become completely dried. A brilliant idea strikes Takumi, who asks if they can be used now. Clea understands instantly and rushes off to find Sebastian. Takumi and Leo are left alone, both looking slightly bewildered. Takumi gently pats Leo, telling him dinner will be a little longer. The evening grows dark outside the grand parlor window. Takumi and Leo sit quietly waiting for news. Clea and Sebastian return, beaming, to announce Tilla has been treated. Takumi is overjoyed, expressing his relief that she will be well. Sebastian explains he heard how the Ramogi dried in Takumi's hand. He recounts that the portion used for the medicine had also dried. Clea reveals their theory. Takumi must possess a gift. A gift, she explains, is a rare present from the gods. Sebastian adds that records of past gift holders exist in their nation. These abilities can be legendary, like forging swords or using powerful magic. The concept of magic is entirely new and fascinating to Takumi. Sebastian notes that no magic can dry plants. It must be a gift. Clea excitedly connects this to his story of coming from another world. Sebastian wonders aloud about such a strange, specific power. He speculates that it might just be one part of a greater ability. Clea eagerly suggests they use magical tools to investigate his power. Takumi is surprised such convenient items exist and agrees to the test. Clea announces that with dinner ready, they should go and eat. Everyone agrees, admitting they are all quite hungry. The scene shifts to an outdoor terrace for their welcome meal. A maid clears away the plates, commenting on how delicious it was. Sebastian promises to pass their compliments along to the chef. Clea encourages Takumi to ask any questions he might have. He thanks her and asks if she can tell him about magic. Clea is surprised by his seemingly basic question. The staff is shocked when he explains magic doesn't exist in his world. Sebastian asks in disbelief if this is really true. Leo dozes peacefully, unconcerned with the magical discussion. Takumi confirms that in his world, magic is only found in stories. Clea looks on, amazed by this fundamental difference between their worlds. She asks Sebastian to provide their guest with a proper explanation. The butler is delighted to have an opportunity to lecture. Takumi thinks to himself that Sebastian seems to enjoy explaining things. Sebastian begins, stating that magic uses the mana inside all living things. He clarifies that the most important component is the incantation. He details the 4 elements and how longer chants create stronger spells. Takumi, curious, asks what the simplest magic incantation is. Sebastian pauses for a moment, considering the question. He demonstrates chanting, "Fire elemental candle" as a flame appears. He explains it's a common spell used for lighting things in households. Takumi is impressed, thinking it's like a magical lighter. Sebastian notes that longer chants are a liability in battle. Takumi and Clea agree that it would be too slow in a fight. The solution to this problem, Sebastian reveals, is chantless magic. Takumi repeats the unfamiliar term, his curiosity piqued. The parlor door swings open as a maid politely announces a visitor. A small girl bursts into the room, crying out for her sister. The sudden intrusion startles the massive but gentle Leo. Clea is shocked as her little sister throws herself into her arms. The entire party looks on at the unexpected arrival. The girl beams, introducing herself as the younger sister, Tilla. Clea asks if she's all right, and Tilla joyfully declares she's all better. A joyful cry of "Big Sister" suddenly rings out on the terrace. A young girl rushes forward, interrupting their conversation. Clea apologizes to Takumi. He reassures her that it's fine, glad to see the girl looking so well. The girl Tilla looks up at Clea, her eyes wide with adoration. Takumi looks at the energetic child, wondering who she might be. Clea explains that this is their guest, the one who saved her from an orc. She adds that he also found the medicine that cured Tilla's illness. Tilla is amazed, her mouth agape as she learns of his heroic deeds. Clea gently reminds her sister that she needs to rest properly after her recovery. Tilla apologizes for having slept for so long, feeling much better now. Clea smiles warmly, affectionately chiding her little sister for her boundless energy. Takumi formally introduces himself as Haruka Takumi, asking her to call him Takumi. Tilla beams, introducing herself as Tilla Revolt and happily agreeing. Her eyes then land on the magnificent creature sitting patiently beside Takumi. "Wow," she exclaims, pointing with unrestrained excitement at the giant white dog. Clea begins to explain that he is a silver fenrir, a legendary creature. Takumi gently corrects her, saying his name is Leo and he is her partner. He adds with a warm smile that Leo absolutely loves playing with children. Tilla's eyes sparkle as she turns to her sister, asking for permission to pet him. Clea agrees, trusting Takumi's judgment that the great beast is gentle. Tilla cautiously approaches, her eyes fixed on Leo's massive, sharp-clawed paw. Leo lowers his head and gives the delighted girl a gentle lick on the cheek. Tilla erupts in a fit of giggles, completely unafraid of the giant wolf. She throws her arms around Leo's massive neck, calling him Leo-sama. With a radiant smile, she hugs the great beast, thanking Takumi profusely. Clea watches them, telling Takumi she's so glad to see Tilla smiling again. She adds that she must thank both him and Leo-sama for this happiness. Tilla, lost in a world of pure joy, continues to cuddle with her new friend. Later that evening, the maid Layla wishes Takumi a good night in his room. Utterly exhausted from the day's events, he collapses onto the luxurious bed. He stares at the ornate ceiling, his mind replaying the impossible chain of events. Looking over, he sees Leo curled up on a rug, already fast asleep. He thinks about how tired his loyal partner must be after everything. He lies back, finally accepting that this incredible dream is his new reality. He muses that this must truly be another world, a thought both terrifying and exciting. Sometime later, he is awoken by Leo's soft, rhythmic barking. He recognizes his partner's voice and groggily wonders if it's already morning. "Leo," he mumbles into his pillow. Let me sleep just a little longer. A gentle female voice playfully teases him, saying he seems bad with mornings. His eyes snap open to see Clea standing by his bed, Tilla peeking out from behind. Clea-san, he exclaims, shooting up in bed, flustered to be caught sleeping. She wishes him a good morning and asks if he slept well. He returns the greeting, complaining that she could have woken him sooner. She informs him that breakfast is ready and asks him to join them. As Clea prepares to leave, Tilla insists on staying with Leo-sama. Takumi smiles, noting how fond Tilla has become of his partner. Tilla playfully argues with her sister, insisting she is old enough to watch Leo. Clea and Tilla share a light-hearted moment before leaving him to get ready. The door closes, and Takumi realizes he has no change of clothes. He wonders if his clothes smell, but Leo's happy expression suggests they don't. He touches his chin, feeling the scratchy stubble of a beard growing in. He decides he will have to ask Sebastian for a razor later. Realizing he's late, he quickly adjusts his tie and rushes to the dining hall. He apologizes to the waiting maids for keeping them waiting. Sebastian greets him formally, and Takumi wishes the butler a good morning. Seated at the grand table, Clea announces that they can begin their meal. Everyone enjoys the magnificent breakfast spread before them. Leo, too, happily tucks into his own specially prepared bowl of sausages. Having finished his meal, Takumi gets Sebastian's attention. He apologetically asks if he might get a change of clothes and a shave. Sebastian bows, promising to have everything brought to his room shortly. Tilla finishes her meal and announces that she's ready to play with Leo. Takumi sees that Leo has also finished his breakfast and is ready to play. He asks Clea if it's all right for the two of them to play together. Tilla jumps for joy as Clea agrees and tells her to go to the back garden. Takumi asks Clea to look after Leo while he returns to his room. Clea asks Leo if he'll be fine without Takumi, and the wolf barks confidently. Takumi walks down the long, beautifully decorated corridor toward his room. He enters to find Layla waiting for him with the items he requested. She informs him that his things are ready and he thanks her. She presents him with an elegant case containing a straight razor. Layla bows and tells him to call if he needs anything else before she leaves. Alone, Takumi examines the unfamiliar tool, wondering if he can shave with it. He closes his eyes, steeling himself for the delicate task ahead. Carefully, he brings the sharp blade to his skin, beginning the shave. He makes a slow, steady stroke with the unfamiliar razor. He finishes, dabbing at a few small nicks from his inexperience. He notes that it stings a bit, but he feels much more presentable. Outside, Tilla calls out to Leo, beckoning him to come play. Clea spots the newly groomed Takumi, exclaiming that he looks completely different. He strides into the garden, now clean-shaven and wearing a smart vest. Clea compliments him, saying the new clothes suit him very well. He turns to Sebastian, thanking him for his impeccable taste and service. The butler smiles warmly, telling him he is at his service anytime. They watch Tilla play, and Sebastian remarks how good it is to see her so well. Takumi gives Clea credit for bravely finding the herb, which makes Sebastian shudder. Clea vows to be more careful in the future and not cause them such worry. Takumi playfully tells her not to worry, but Sebastian insists he let it go. Sebastian urges Takumi to scold her a little, but Takumi just laughs. He turns to Clea and says he finds her earnestness quite cute. Clea is stunned, her cheeks flushing as she realizes what he just said. Takumi asks if she is all right, and she insists she is, though clearly flustered. The cover image shows a confident Takumi standing beside the magnificent Leo. The chapter begins with Clea reading a bedtime story to her younger sister Tilla. At the villa's gate, Sebastian wishes Lady Clea and Takumi-sama a safe journey. Holding the reins of the carriage, Sebastian announces their departure. The carriage door shuts with a solid, satisfying thud. They set off for the town of Ratosse to buy necessary supplies for Takumi. In the carriage, Clea reassures Takumi not to worry about the cost. Humbled by her generosity, Takumi bows his head and thanks her sincerely. As their carriage journeyed onward, Takumi looked out the window with a thoughtful expression. He turned to Clea, recalling their conversation about the mysterious power known as a gift. He wondered aloud if they might learn more about his own strange ability in town. Sebastian confirmed they would investigate after they had finished their shopping. Clea smiled in agreement, and Takumi understood that a plan was now in place. Clea quietly pondered the true nature of these special powers. Sebastian, too, gazed at the passing landscape, lost in thought about the mystery of gifts. He began to explain that while gifts grant various abilities, their origins remain unknown. He added that their awakening is unpredictable, occurring at any point in a person's life. Clea turned to Takumi, her expression earnest as she addressed him. She stated her belief that the most important thing is how one chooses to use their power. Takumi met her gaze, quietly agreeing with her profound wisdom. Soon, the impressive walled town of Ratosse appeared before them. At the gate, Takumi gently calmed Leo, much to the surprise of a nearby guard. Their party passed through the grand stone entrance and into the town proper. Sebastian announced he would stable the carriage, asking them to wait for him. Takumi took a moment to absorb the sights and sounds of the unfamiliar town. He was immediately struck by the lively energy of the bustling streets. Clea proudly asked him what he thought of the town of Ratosse. He noted the sheer volume of people, and Clea readily agreed. She explained that the town's location makes it a vital and lively thoroughfare. Takumi questioned why all travelers were forced to pass through this specific town. He realized with a jolt that the surrounding forest was where he had first awoken. A simple map illustrated how the train funneled all safe travel through Ratosse. Sebastian returned, announcing it was finally time for them to begin their shopping. The group made their way down the crowded cobblestone street. They soon arrived at the entrance to a vibrant and sprawling marketplace. Sebastian proudly declared that this was the finest market in all of Ratosse. He announced they were buying food for the mansion, and Leo's ears perked up. The magnificent sight of glistening sausages hanging in a stall caught Leo's eye. The giant wolf lunged forward, dragging a struggling Takumi behind him. Leo let out a sad whine as Takumi managed to hold him back. Clea laughed, remarking on Leo's intense love for sausages. She promised Leo a feast of his favorite treat, and his eyes lit up with joy. Sebastian then directed them to their next destination, a tailor's shop. The party stood before the entrance of a respectable-looking establishment. The wooden door creaked open as they stepped inside. A cheerful tailor named Halton greeted them, recognizing Lady Clea immediately. Clea explained they were here for Takumi, and the tailor confirmed he was ready. Takumi was surprised, questioning if they were really having clothes tailored. He looked around, realizing the shop specialized in custom-ordered garments. He insisted to a perplexed Clea that mass-produced clothes would be fine. Clea looked utterly shocked, asking if mass-produced clothes were a real thing. Sebastian gently explained to her that commoners often bought pre-made clothing. She was amazed, confessing she had only ever worn custom-tailored garments. Takumi smiled to himself, thinking that she was truly a high-born lady. He politely asked the tailor if he could see the ready-made options first. Clea, however, felt strongly that he should have something properly tailored. Takumi silently hoped to avoid anything that looked too expensive. Clea watched him, a thoughtful expression on her face. She insisted that he get at least one good outfit, declaring it was necessary. The tailor smiled, promising the new clothes would be ready in a few days. They thanked him and finalized the arrangements for the order. As they departed, the tailor bowed deeply in gratitude. Sebastian announced their next stop would be a general store for smaller items. Suddenly, a smirking man in a fedora stepped out to block their path. His gang of ruffians surrounded the group, demanding they hand over their money. The revolt guards immediately drew their swords, telling their lady to stay back. The leader laughed, confident that his 6 men could easily overpower the 2 guards. Takumi looked on wearily, wondering what kind of dystopian world he'd landed in. A low, menacing growl rumbled from just behind Takumi. Leo stepped forward, his eyes narrowed with intent, as Takumi whispered his name. The thug leader looked up, his face a mask of pure shock. His cronies stared in disbelief, wondering what the giant wolf was. The leader foolishly cursed at Leo and lunged forward to attack. Leo's gaze remained fixed and unblinking as the man charged him. With lightning speed, Leo snapped his powerful jaws shut before the man's face. The man was paralyzed with terror, his knife clattering uselessly to the ground. Takumi gently chided his partner for trying to eat something so strange. The thug collapsed backward, having fainted from the sheer terror of the encounter. With the threat neutralized, Takumi turned to Clea, asking what they should do now. She calmly suggested calling the town guard, and her escort immediately complied. Takumi asked if such criminals were common, and Sebastian explained the town's troubles. He noted that they often preyed on the many merchants and travelers passing through. The captured thugs protested loudly as their hands were bound with rope. Takumi and Leo stood over the subdued criminals with stern, unimpressed expressions. The town guard finally arrived on the scene, their boots stomping on the cobblestones. The captain of the guard looked at the bound men and asked if they were the culprits. He apologized profusely to Lady Clea and promised to take the men away at once. With the criminals gone, a semblance of peace returned to the bustling street. Clea apologized for the trouble, but Takumi assured her that Leo had acted on his own. Sebastian declared it was time for them to resume their shopping trip. Clea glanced back, a serious and thoughtful expression on her face. Just as they were about to leave, a hesitant voice called out from the crowd. Takumi turned around, wondering who was trying to get their attention. A young woman with reddish-brown hair asked if she might have a moment of their time. She approached them, apologizing for the interruption, her hands clasped nervously. She asked if the wolf was his familiar, then gasped as she recognized Lady Clea. Takumi and Clea exchanged a look of mutual confusion at her sudden change in demeanor. They stood silently, waiting for the young woman to explain herself. Takumi corrected her, stating that Leo was his partner, not just a familiar. The woman rushed forward, completely flustered by her own boldness. She knelt and apologized profusely to Lady Clea for her impertinent behavior. Clea graciously told the woman there was no need for such formality. Takumi noticed that Clea had addressed not just the woman, but the entire crowd. He turned to see the whole street had knelt, much to Lady Clea's shock. The woman asked if the wolf was truly the legendary creature she believed it to be. Clea looked to Takumi for confirmation, and he happily gave his consent. She took a confident step forward to address the gathered townsfolk. She turned to the young woman who had started it all and calmly asked for her name. A young woman with reddish-brown hair nervously approaches Takumi, asking if she might speak with him. She hesitates for a moment before introducing herself as Emerald. She recounts the wolf's impossible feats, asking if it could possibly be a legendary silver fenrir. Clea, ever poised, calmly confirms that her suspicions are correct. She then addresses the gathered crowd, assuring them that this silver fenrir, Leo-sama, is not dangerous. Emerald looks on in disbelief, asking if that's really true, as whispers ripple through the onlookers. Takumi offers a reassuring smile, telling her that Leo is very gentle and won't be frightened. Still skeptical, Emerald begins to protest, her voice filled with doubt. Her mind races, recalling the legends of the silver fenrir, the most powerful and undefeated of all monsters. To prove his point, Takumi gives a simple command, and Leo instantly lies down on the cobblestones. Emerald's eyes go wide with shock, stunned by the legendary creature's perfect obedience. Takumi calmly rests a hand on Leo's head, the picture of a master and his loyal companion. He explains that Leo's peaceful presence in the busy town is the ultimate proof of his harmlessness. Emerald realizes the town guard hadn't reacted, and Sebastian notes they only gave a simple warning. With a kind smile, Takumi invites the still hesitant Emerald to come a little closer. He assures her that Leo won't bite, and she finally cautiously agrees. Her hand sinks into the thick, impossibly soft fur of the magnificent beast. She murmurs that he is indeed gentle, as Takumi watches with a proud smile. She marvels at how addictive the sensation is, unable to believe this is a silver fenrir. Takumi beams with pride, adding that Leo has a very fine coat of fur. Clea steps forward, declaring that Leo is a welcome guest of the Revolt household. This, she explains, is the ultimate guarantee of his safety, a fact Emerald readily accepts. She apologizes for being so frightened, but Takumi waves it off, telling her not to worry. Just as the matter seems settled, Takumi is startled by another voice from the crowd. A man steps forward, his face eager, asking if they might be allowed to pet the wolf too. Takumi and Leo look on in wide-eyed surprise at the sudden, unexpected request. Soon, a massive, orderly queue forms, the people of Ratosse waiting patiently to pet the resting Leo. 2 hours later, their shopping continues at a large, impressive building. Sebastian announces that this is the largest general store in Ratosse, and Takumi looks up in awe. A jovial man with a grand mustache, the proprietor, welcomes Lady Clea with a bow. Clea greets him as Hein and gestures to Takumi, introducing him as her companion. Takumi gives a polite introduction, and Hein, the store owner, welcomes him warmly. With a grand gesture, Hein ushers them inside, telling them to leave everything to him. The shop's shelves are packed with all manner of goods, from preserved foods to packaged items. It is a wonderland of trinkets, jewelry, and decorative items hanging from the walls and ceiling. There is even an entire section dedicated to swords, shields, and full suits of armor. Takumi looks around, amazed, thinking that the store truly has everything. As he browses, his eyes catch on something that makes him pause. He stares at a display of clocks, noticing that none of them have minute or second hands. He turns to Clea, who is examining a display of fine china, to ask her about it. He explains to her his observation, pointing out the strange timepieces. He learns that in this world, a day is 28 hours long, marked by a 14-hour clock face. He wonders if the speed of time itself is different from his old world. The proprietor, Hein, smiles, asking if he's found anything he likes. Takumi looks at a small mantle clock, asking if Hein is referring to the timepieces. He requests both a mantle clock and a pocket watch, which Clea agrees to purchase for him. Sebastian then asks if there is anything else he might need for himself. Takumi thinks about buying thank you gifts, but knows he can't afford them. The ever-perceptive Sebastian approaches, asking if anything else has caught his eye. Takumi admits he was looking at 2 accessories, thinking they would look nice on Clea and Tilla. Sebastian immediately understands his intent, but Takumi confesses that he has no money. The butler listens thoughtfully, then says he will give up on the idea for now. He then claps his hands together, cheerfully suggesting they buy the gifts with the reward money. He explains that all of today's shopping was meant to be covered by the reward for saving Clea. Takumi feels a pang of guilt, arguing that it was Leo who did the saving. He decides that while he's grateful for their generosity, he will find a way to pay them back. As they leave the shop, the bell jingles and the proprietor wishes them a good day. Takumi clutches the bags filled with their new purchases. He notes that the earlier commotion has delayed them, and it will be getting dark soon. He stops in his tracks, a sudden realization dawning on him. He remembers that they had planned to investigate his mysterious gift. Sebastian, who had also forgotten, confirms that they still have time and should go now. Takumi gulps, a bead of sweat forming on his brow as he prepares for the unknown. He steels his resolve, agreeing to finally learn the truth about his power. They arrive at a small, rather suspicious-looking gray building with a 5-pointed star on the door. The door creaks open as they step into the dimly lit interior. Sebastian announces their presence to the seemingly empty shop. A beaded curtain rustles, and an old woman's voice chides them for being late. The woman, introducing herself as Isabel, emerges with a knowing smile. Sebastian apologizes for the delay, and Isabel exchanges pleasantries with a slightly flustered Clea. Isabel's sharp, intelligent eyes then flick over to Takumi. She states matter-of-factly that he must be the boy who is here for a mana appraisal. Takumi recalls Clea mentioning that the appraisal could reveal the nature of his gift. He politely introduces himself to Isabel, and she greets him in return. She instructs him to place his hand on a large crystal orb on the counter. He takes a seat as Clea and Sebastian watch from a respectful distance. As his hand hovers over the crystal, it begins to spark and glow with an inner light. He rests his hand on the orb, which pulses with a soft, magical energy. He looks on in wide-eyed surprise as the light intensifies. The entire shop begins to shake, the magical artifacts on the shelves rattling in response. Isabel looks at the glowing orb and tells Takumi that she now understands his power. She reveals that he possesses a great deal of mana, enough to become a skilled mage. Her expression then becomes serious as she asks him directly if he has a gift. She reveals the name of his power, weed cultivation, explaining it does exactly what its name implies. Clea, utterly confused, asks what possible use such a gift could have. Isabel explains that it can cultivate any plant that isn't grown for agriculture. Clea's eyes widen as she asks if that includes medicinal herbs. Isabel confirms it can grow any plant that is found in the wild. She reminds them of how the rare Ramogi herb appeared right where Takumi sat down in the forest. Takumi finally understands, realizing it was his weed cultivation gift at work. He recalls the moment, a memory he hadn't shared with Clea. He remembers simply thinking about the Ramogi, and it sprouted from the ground beneath his hand. Clea looks on, stunned, as she realizes that is indeed what must have happened. Isabel smiles, confirming that her appraisal matches the event and that his ability is very useful. Clea suddenly remembers another strange occurrence, how the Ramogi dried instantly in his hand. Isabel explains that this too is part of his gift's power to change a plant to its optimal state. Takumi recalls thinking how useful it would be if the herb could be used right away. He looks on in quiet amazement, a bead of sweat on his cheek. He realizes he can grow any non-vegetable plant and prepare it for immediate use. He thanks Isabel for her help, and she replies that she only appraised his mana. The old woman Isabel offers Takumi one final piece of parting advice. She explains that a gift is a special power, and its use is up to him. He understands he must figure out how to use his weed cultivation gift. Takumi accepts her words with a look of quiet, newfound resolve. They return to the magnificent Revolt Villa under a starry night sky. A maid formally greets Clea upon their return to the grand estate. The entire household staff is assembled to welcome them home in the grand hall. Clea suggests they put their things away and then gather for dinner. Lila informs Clea that the evening meal has been fully prepared for them. The new chapter begins with Takumi reflecting on the day's events. In his room, Takumi lets out a long, weary sigh. He admits to himself he is tired from this unfamiliar world. His expression softens as he turns his gaze to his loyal companion, Leo. He gently calls the massive white wolf to come closer to him. He places a comforting hand on Leo's thick, soft white fur. He praises Leo for being so patient with the curious townspeople. He thanks Leo for his help when they were accosted by thugs. He tells Leo that his presence makes him feel safe, even here. Layla gently knocks, reminding him it is time for dinner. Startled, Takumi apologizes for keeping her waiting at the door. They make their way toward the grand dining hall for the evening meal. After a delicious meal, they all enjoy a quiet cup of tea. Takumi is so impressed with the food that he offers effusive praise. The head chef, Helena, is overjoyed by his compliments. She bows deeply to Clea, grateful for the opportunity to be praised. Takumi watches Clea, a thoughtful expression on his face. The atmosphere becomes more intimate as they sit across the vast table. He decides that it is time to ask her about her own story. He gets her attention, his tone now more serious than before. He reminds her that he has been completely open with her. He asks if she will now share her own story with him. Clea is taken aback, momentarily stunned into silence by his directness. Her mind goes completely blank from the unexpected and personal question. She becomes incredibly flustered, a deep blush coloring her cheeks. Takumi is confused by her extreme reaction to his simple question. He realizes he needs to clarify what he is asking about. He asks why she lives here and why she is so respected. She laughs, understanding now that his questions were not romantic in nature. She takes a deep breath and begins to explain her circumstances. She bluntly states they are here to get away from her father. She explains her father dotes on them, but constantly brings marriage proposals. Takumi is surprised to hear about the arranged marriage meetings. She recalls once having 5 proposals in a single day. Even her younger sister Tilla was subjected to these meetings. Takumi is shocked that a 10-year-old would be involved. She explains that they became fed up and left their main home. Her frustration suddenly boils over as she begins a passionate rant. The intensity of her sudden outburst is palpable in the room. For the next half hour, she complains about her father's actions. She finally clears her throat, apologizing for her passionate outburst. Takumi brings the conversation back to his other question about the town. He recalls how the town guards seem to know her name instantly. She reveals that her father is the duke who rules this entire territory. Takumi is stunned to learn he is in the presence of a duchess. She explains the ranks of nobility, placing duke just below the royal family. He immediately tries to apologize for his informal behavior with her. She insists that he should continue to treat her as he has been. He is shocked to realize her family's rank is second only to the king. She even asks him to speak to her as casually as he does with Tilla. He is hesitant, unsure if he can be so informal with a duchess. Sebastian, with a gentle smile, reassures him that it is perfectly fine. He explains that as master of a silver fenrir, Takumi is considered their superior. Sebastian places a heavy, ornate box on the dining room table. He reminds Takumi of their earlier conversation about the royal family's crest. He reveals the revolt crest, which adds fangs and claws to the wolf. Takumi and Clea look closely, confirming the aggressive additions to the design. The royal crest symbolizes authority, while the revolt crest symbolizes martial power. The revolt family has a long and storied history with the silver fenrirs. A silver fenrir helped their ancestor in a great war. Since that day, they have considered it their duty to revere the creatures. Takumi finds it hard to connect the legends to his own gentle Leo. This history is why so many people in their territory recognize the beast. Sebastian gets Takumi's attention, preparing to change the subject. He leads Takumi away from the table for a private word. Sebastian discreetly asks Takumi what he wishes to do about that item. Takumi suddenly remembers the gifts he had intended to buy for the sisters. He places 2 beautifully wrapped boxes on the table before Clea and Tilla. The sisters look at the unexpected presents with curiosity and surprise. He explains that they are a small token of his gratitude. He becomes flustered trying to explain, as Sebastian urges him to compose himself. He encourages them to open the gifts, much to their surprise. He hands the first gift, a long, slender box, to young Tilla. She eagerly tears away the wrapping paper to reveal what is inside. She finds a beautiful necklace with a pendant shaped like a wolf. He then presents the second, larger gift box to a stunned Clea. She opens it to find an exquisite corsage of pristine white flowers. Overjoyed, she thanks him sincerely for the beautiful and thoughtful gift. Clea immediately calls for the maid Layla to come and assist her. Layla helps her pin the beautiful corsage in her long blonde hair. She turns to Takumi, asking him how the new accessory looks on her. He tells her that an already beautiful person has become even more so. Sebastian and Leo watch the scene with warm, happy expressions. The next day, Takumi studies a botanical encyclopedia in the courtyard. He marvels at the sheer variety of medicinal herbs in this new world. The scene flashes back to about 30 minutes prior to his experiment. He finds Clea and politely asks if he might borrow the garden. He explains that he wants to experiment with his weed cultivation gift. Clea is intrigued by his request to test out his newfound power. He wants to see what useful plants he can create with his ability. Clea smiles and readily agrees, granting him permission to use the garden. Takumi turns his attention to the distinguished butler, Sebastian. He asks if there are any books about medicinal herbs in the villa. Later, he is engrossed in a large botanical encyclopedia. The book shows a drawing of a spiky, fleshy-leafed plant. He stands in the garden, pondering how he can read the unfamiliar text. A thought strikes him, and he wonders if the plant Ro is actually aloe. He decides to test his power by creating a plant he can easily visualize. Rolling up his sleeves, he prepares to put his new theory to the test. Sebastian, Clea, and Leo all watch him with rapt attention. He crouches low to the ground, announcing that he is about to begin. He begins to invoke the name of his unique and powerful gift. With his hand pressed to the earth, he unleashes his weed cultivation ability. The ground before him suddenly bursts upwards with a cloud of dust. His own eyes widen in surprise at the immediate, powerful reaction. The entire audience, including Leo, gasps in shared astonishment. From the disturbed soil, the first leaves of a new plant emerge. It grows at an impossible rate, its thick leaves unfurling rapidly. He stares in amazement at the massive, fully grown plant he just created. Tilla cheers for his success while Sebastian and Clea are utterly stunned. Sebastian approaches, asking if Takumi was already familiar with the Ro plant. The miraculous, oversized plant stands proudly in the middle of the garden. Takumi explains that a similar plant existed in his own world. The butler listens intently, processing this incredible new information. Sebastian explains that Ro is a powerful healing herb in this world. Takumi realizes with certainty that it's the same as the aloe he knows. He suddenly leaps from his chair as he listens to the butler. Sebastian reveals that the herb heals wounds the very instant it's applied. He adds that it can even heal bone-deep cuts without leaving a scar. Takumi is shocked, realizing this plant is far more potent than he thought. Sebastian explains that its extreme rarity makes it incredibly valuable. Takumi is surprised to learn just how precious the herb is. The butler muses on the incredible potential of Takumi's unique power. Takumi cautiously asks just how much the valuable herb might be worth. Sebastian reveals that just 10 leaves are valuable enough to build a house. Overwhelmed, Takumi realizes he could become a merchant selling these herbs. Clea considers the business potential of his gift, which requires no startup cost. She stands abruptly, determined to discuss this new business opportunity. He admits that he doesn't want to be a freeloader and wishes to work. Sebastian wisely warns that flooding the market would crash the herb's value. Clea suggests they keep the first plant for the villa's own use. She then offers to cooperate with him if he decides to sell his herbs. She formally proposes that the Revelt family will handle all the sales. He confirms she means the ducal house will act as the official vendor. She explains that taxes only cover the costs of governance and the military. The family relies on private businesses to generate their personal income. The ducal family's name would lend credibility and trust to the venture. She assures him that he will be well compensated for his partnership. He admits that he has no real desire to be a merchant himself. He confesses he lacks business skills and will entrust it to their family. Clea smiles, happy that he has accepted her preliminary proposal. She suddenly remembers a major obstacle. She needs her father's permission. She laments the endless stream of arranged marriage proposals from him. She becomes fired up, seeing this as a way to refuse the proposals. Takumi spends the afternoon turning a corner of the garden into an herb patch. He creates a new plant that wasn't in the book, purely from his imagination. Watching them play, he wished for a stamina-restoring herb and created one. Back in his room, he examines the mysterious leaf he created by chance. Deciding to study it later, he sets the leaf down before heading to dinner. Later that evening, Leo enjoys his meal with great messy enthusiasm. Takumi sees the mess on his partner's face and declares it's bath time. The giant wolf howls in protest as Takumi insists on a thorough wash. He drags the reluctant wolf away, much to Clea's quiet amusement. Water splashes in the grand, marble-lined bathhouse of the villa. Takumi informs a dejected Leo that baths will now be a regular routine. With a cheerful grin, he prepares to douse the giant wolf with warm water. He vigorously scrubs Leo's back with a brush, suds flying everywhere. Leo squeezes his eyes shut, enduring the thorough and splashy scrubbing. Covered in suds, Takumi remarks on how dirty his giant partner was. He muses that it's no wonder, given their recent journey in the forest. He announces it's time to wash Leo's face, much to the wolf's surprise. He scolds Leo for getting his handsome face covered in meat sauce. Wiping his brow, he proudly declares that the arduous washing is complete. Leo vigorously shakes himself, sending a shower of water across the room. He calls the maid Layla to help dry the massive, dripping wolf. The grand empty bathhouse steams quietly after they have finished. Takumi finally gets to relax, sinking into the hot water with a deep sigh. He smiles contentedly, thinking how wonderful a bath is after a long day. He splashes happily, declaring that a large bath is the absolute best. He reflects that while washing Leo was hard work, it was also fun. The sound of a door opening signals his return to the main villa. He thanks the assembled staff and family for the use of the bath. Tilla exclaims how wonderfully soft the freshly cleaned Leo's fur is. Clea welcomes him back, praising his efforts in bathing the giant wolf. Tilla buries her face in Leo's fur, amazed at its incredible softness. Clea remarks that Leo's silver coat seems to shine more brightly now. She muses that his noble appearance makes the legends easy to believe. Takumi agrees that Leo's fur is indeed beautiful and well kept now. Clea changes the subject, bringing up the forest where they first met. She reveals a family legend connecting her ancestor to that very forest. He asks if her ancestor was connected to a legendary silver fenrir. She asks him to accompany her and Leo deep into the legendary forest. Her eyes are wide and full of earnest, determined hope for her quest. She repeats her plea, leaving a shocked Takumi at a loss for words. He can only stare, completely taken aback by her sudden, serious request. The entire household, including Leo, reacts with collective shock. She explains that her ancestor's legendary meeting happened in those woods. He recalls the dense, imposing forest where he first awoke in this world. He asks her how her ancestor managed to befriend the legendary beast. Clea admits that the crucial details of their bond are unknown. She explains that no matter where she looks, the story is incomplete. Tilla joyfully embraces Leo's massive snout, but Clea's story takes a turn. She recounts a legend of someone trapped by fenrirs in that very forest. Because of this ancient tale, the woods earned the name Fenrir's Forest. Takumi, seeking clarity, asks about the difference between the two types of beasts. Clea explains that regular fenrirs are much smaller and slower than Leo. Yet they are still faster than humans and can easily tear them apart. She adds that no one has seen any fenrirs since her ancestors' time. The imposing canopy of the legendary Fenrir's forest looms before them in thought. Takumi reflects on the strange coincidences connecting him, Leo, and Clea to this place. He can't help but feel that some greater destiny is at play here. As Clea begins to speak again, Takumi listens with focused attention. The forest has become a legend, she says, and no one dares explore it. He understands her true meaning. She believes fenrirs might still live there. With a brilliant smile, Clea confirms his suspicion is exactly right. Sebastian, however, rushes forward in a panic, begging his lady to reconsider. He insists the journey is too dangerous, even with their powerful companions. The maids agree, certain that no human could survive such a dangerous expedition. They all plead with Lady Clea, begging her to change her mind. Clea firmly silences them, stating this is a matter for her and Takumi. She apologizes for the interruption and formally repeats her request to Takumi. Takumi listens, the weight of her earnest plea settling upon him. Clea watches him, her expression filled with unwavering hope and determination. He realizes the atmosphere is so tense that he cannot possibly refuse her. He asks if he can consult with Leo first, and Clea readily agrees. Turning away from the tense group, Takumi calls out for his partner. Leo lifts his head from Tilla's embrace, his attention fixed on Takumi. Now facing his massive companion, Takumi prepares to explain the situation. He asks Leo his thoughts on returning to the forest with Lady Clea. He asks his partner if he is truly willing to make the journey. He voices his concerns about dangers, but Leo responds with confident barks. Takumi is shocked, realizing Leo just dismissed the legendary fenrirs as small fry. He translates for the group. Silver fenrirs will welcome each other as kin. He marvels at Leo's claim that he can easily defeat an entire pack. He worries about other monsters, but Leo dismisses them with another bark. All other monsters, Leo insists, are mere trifles compared to fenrirs. Takumi wonders how his partner knows so much about these legendary creatures. He then asks Leo how he can understand him, a mystery to them both. Deciding to accept it, Takumi smiles and says that it's nothing to worry about. With Leo's enthusiastic approval, Takumi's decision is finally made. He turns back to the waiting Clea, ready to give her his answer. Taking her hand, he agrees to go, much to her absolute delight. The household staff, however, reacts with looks of pure, unadulterated horror. Takumi turns to the staff, sensing their immediate and powerful objections. The three of them can only manage a weak, defeated reply. He tells them he understands their desire to stop Clea's dangerous plan. Sebastian gravely confirms that this is indeed their greatest concern. He doesn't want to see his beloved lady put in any danger. But Takumi reassures them, stating that with Leo, the forest will be safe. Sebastian, his face etched with doubt, asks if that is truly the case. As Takumi confirms it, Layla asks how he can understand the great beast. He admits he doesn't know how, but he can just understand his partner. Layla notes that Leo seems to be agreeing with everything Takumi says. The three servants are left utterly speechless by this unbelievable revelation. Leo lets out a series of powerful barks as if to confirm everything. Takumi relays Leo's final guarantee: silver fenrirs will not fight their own. Clea asks if he's satisfied, and a defeated Sebastian finally relents. With the matter settled, Clea joyfully announces their plan is moving forward. She asks him to prepare so they can depart as soon as tomorrow. Takumi then asks Clea why she is so determined to find another silver fenrir. She hesitates to answer, glancing back at her younger sister Tilla. She decides against it, suggesting they save the conversation for another time. She points out that their long discussion has lulled Tilla to sleep. Takumi and Clea share a look of quiet understanding over the sleeping girl. She whispers that she will explain on the journey, away from Sebastian's ears. Takumi quietly agrees to keep her confidence until they are alone. She offers him a small knowing smile, sealing their secret pact. Later, in the quiet solitude of his room, Takumi reflects. He muses that he never thought he would return to that terrifying forest. He had planned to never go back after the orcs and getting lost. But Clea's wish and his own curiosity have changed his mind. His eyes fall upon the mysterious leaf he created with his gift. He had simply left the strange plant lying on the small table. He makes a mental note to investigate its properties when he has time. Before he can, Leo suddenly snatches the leaf up in his mouth. The great wolf swallows the unknown herb in a single, swift gulp. As Leo contentedly chews, Takumi cries out to him in alarm. He stares at his partner, his face a mask of pure shock. He grabs Leo's face, frantic that the unknown herb might be poison. Suddenly, Leo radiates a powerful energy, knocking a stunned Takumi backward. Takumi can only stare in disbelief, wondering what is happening to his friend. The great wolf's entire body seems to sparkle with newfound vitality. His tail wags with immense force as Takumi asks what has happened. He asks Leo what effect the mysterious herb had on him. He understands the reply. Leo feels stronger and more invigorated than ever. Takumi realizes he may have created an incredible stamina-restoring herb. Later that night, sleep seems a distant prospect for the two of them. He tells the energetic Leo that they won't be getting much sleep tonight. He agrees to play for a while, since their journey begins tomorrow. The next morning, the expedition party assembles in the grand entrance hall. Layla announces that their preparations are complete and they are ready to leave. Takumi takes in the sight of the staff, now dressed for their adventure. He asks if all the guards are coming, concerned about the group's size. Clea firmly insists that they will not be reducing their numbers any further. As Tilla waves, Takumi explains he was simply thinking of Clea's comfort. Tilla wishes them all to be careful and to return home soon. The door to their large, sturdy carriage is open for them. Sebastian takes the reins, ready to guide them to the forest's edge. Inside the carriage, Takumi finds himself seated snugly between the two women. He blushes, feeling a bit flustered by their very close proximity. Leo glances back from outside, a knowing and amused look on his face. Sebastian chuckles softly from the driver's seat, remarking on their youthful spirit. Inside the carriage, Clea scolds him as she and a flustered Takumi sit close. With a final call, Sebastian announces their departure from the Grand Revolt Villa. The carriage rumbles down the road, with the magnificent Leo loping effortlessly alongside. Takumi leans out the window, asking Sebastian how long the journey will take. Noticing his expression, Clea asks Takumi if something is the matter. Curious about his past, she asks how people traveled in his original world. Takumi explains that they rode in self-propelled vehicles that were made of iron. Layla is shocked, asking if that means his was a world without magic. Clea's eyes widen, sparkling with intense curiosity at this new information. Takumi continues his explanation, gazing out at the passing landscape. He clarifies that these vehicles were powered by a kind of liquid fuel. He explains that burning this fuel created power, making the heavy iron machines move. Clea is completely captivated, exclaiming that it sounds like incredible technology. Takumi muses that it's how they enrich their lives in place of magic. The carriage continues its journey, passing through a landscape of forested mountains. They finally arrive at the edge of the vast, imposing Fenrir's forest. Takumi disembarks and immediately checks on his partner, asking if he's tired. Sebastian gently unfastens the harnesses from the team of powerful horses. Takumi asks what will become of the horses while they are in the forest. Layla cheerfully suggests that Takumi and the guards should gather some firewood. A large pile of dry branches is quickly assembled for a campfire. Takumi and Leo stand beside their handiwork, satisfied with the amount. Takumi notices Leo's focused gaze fixed upon the pile of wood. He tells Sebastian that Leo seems to want to be the one to light it. Clea is overjoyed, thrilled at the chance to witness a silver fenrir use magic. The entire party stands back, watching as Leo approaches the kindling. The great wolf takes a deep, deliberate breath, gathering his magical energy. He then unleashes a powerful torrent of brilliant orange flame from his mouth. The entire party, from the nobles to the armored guards, stares in utter shock. The bonfire crackles merrily, having been instantly and perfectly lit. Clea marvels aloud that this is the legendary magic of a silver fenrir. After they have finished their meal, Clea reaches for a gift she brought. Layla smiles, thanking Leo for the fire and announcing she will now cook. She kneels by the fire, asking the great beast to wait just a moment. She prepares to serve the meal in a stack of simple wooden bowls. After the delicious meal, Leo lets out a happy bark of thanks to Layla. Clea announces that once they have cleaned up, it's time to move on. She calls out to Takumi and Sebastian, her expression serious. She presents Takumi with a beautifully crafted short sword in a scabbard. Takumi is surprised, admitting he has never held a sword before. Clea explains that it will be useful for clearing their path in the forest. Takumi understands and offers his sincere thanks for the thoughtful gift. As he examines the new blade, Leo sniffs it with quiet curiosity. Sebastian announces their plan, to cut through the woods and find the river. With their preparations complete, the party steps into the dense, dark woods. A guard confirms their strategy to use the river as a guide. Takumi smiles, remarking on how cheerful Leo seems to be. They gaze up at the thick canopy of ancient trees blocking out the sky. The forest is a silent, imposing world of towering trunks and deep shadows. After some time, Sebastian announces he can hear the sound of the river. Clea is breathing heavily, clearly exhausted from the arduous trek. Layla encourages her, promising a rest once they reach the water. Suddenly, Leo freezes, his massive body going tense and his ears perking up. A low, menacing growl rumbles deep in his chest, alerting everyone to danger. Takumi gasps, startled by his partner's sudden, aggressive posture. The guard Johanna cries out a warning that orcs are approaching them. Clea is alarmed, repeating the word orcs in shocked disbelief. Sebastian calls out to Philip, the head guard, who instantly responds. Philip barks orders to his subordinates, Johanna and Nicola, to form up. Johanna declares with fierce determination that they will protect Lady Clea. The three guards form a protective semicircle around the nobles. Nicola acknowledges the command, his expression grim and ready for battle. Takumi decides he must fight as well, reaching for his new weapon. He draws the short sword from its scabbard, his face set with resolve. He senses the enemy charging through the undergrowth, getting closer. The guards are shocked as three hulking orcs burst from the trees. The brutish monsters charge forward with a thunderous, ground-shaking roar. In a flash of white fur and fury, Leo launches himself into the fray. The ensuing attack is a devastating whirlwind of teeth and claws. In an instant, Leo stands victorious over the body of a slain orc. Philip can only marvel that the entire confrontation was over in a moment. Clea, Layla, and Sebastian watch the display of power in silent, wide-eyed awe. Takumi rushes to his partner's side, calling his name to check on him. He asks Leo if he's all right after the brief but incredibly brutal fight. Leo responds with a giant, affectionate, and very slobbery lick to Takumi's face. Takumi laughs, stroking the great wolf's head and praising him for his bravery. The bodies of the three slain orcs lie broken on the forest floor. Takumi stands with his loyal and powerful guardian amidst the carnage. He admits they couldn't do anything, while the guards feel their own inadequacy. Sebastian is astounded, never having imagined such incredible combat power. Leo lets out a series of happy barks, drawing Clea's attention. Clea, her curiosity piqued, asks what Leo is trying to tell them now. Takumi listens to his partner for a moment, a bead of sweat on his brow. He translates for the shocked guards. Leo says that orc meat is delicious. Clea notes that orcs are a dangerous foe, even for the most seasoned soldiers. Takumi tells the stunned guards that for now, they should head for the river. He asks Leo if he's capable of carrying one of the heavy orc carcasses. Sebastian smiles, remarking on how dependable their powerful companion is. He then directs the guards to carry the two remaining orc bodies. The guards struggle under the immense weight of the fallen monsters. Takumi watches them, thinking how difficult their task must be. He is suddenly struck by a flash of inspiration, remembering his gift. He quickly reaches into the satchel hanging at his side. He calls out to Philip and the others, asking them to wait a moment. He finds what he's looking for in his bag, a small, leafy herb. He presents the strange plant to the confused guards. He explains that eating it will likely make carrying the orcs much easier. The guards look at the herbs with skepticism, but agree to give them a try. They each pop the strange, bitter leaves into their mouths. The guards are pleasantly surprised by the herb's delicious, soda-like taste. A soldier exclaims that his body feels light, strong enough to lift an orc. With powerful roars, the revitalized guards effortlessly lift the heavy orc carcasses. Clea is stunned, and Takumi explains he created the herb with his weed cultivation. He holds up the miraculous leaf, the source of their renewed strength. Takumi dismisses it as a chance creation, urging them onward to the river. Clea puffs her cheeks, insisting he must explain everything to her later on. The dense forest finally opens up as they approach the riverbank clearing. Takumi steps forward, announcing that they have finally reached their destination. Clea breathes a sigh of relief, glad they can finally take a break. With a joyful bark, Leo launches himself enthusiastically towards the river. Takumi encourages the weary Clea, telling her they are almost there. The great wolf splashes happily, enjoying a refreshing swim in the cool water. On the riverbank, Leo shakes himself dry as the rest of the party settles. Takumi smiles, noting that his partner still swims with a familiar doggy paddle. Clea sits alone on a rock, her eyes closed in quiet, somber thought. The party works efficiently, butchering meat and preparing their evening meal. By the water's edge, the guards continue the grim work of preparing the orcs. Takumi calls out to Clea, breaking the silence of her solitary contemplation. He approaches her, announcing that they have decided on a place to camp. Takumi asks if she is all right, sensing her quiet distress. She forces a smile, insisting she is fine and can continue walking. He looks on with concern, sensing she has pushed herself past her limits. They decide to make their camp for the night in the clearing by the river. Sebastian instructs Lady Clea to rest while the others set up the camp. Philip smiles, announcing that the guards will handle preparing the tents. Lila prepares to cook the orc meat, and Takumi offers to lend a hand. She asks if he could help, and he readily agrees with a cheerful smile. A mischievous idea suddenly flashes through Takumi's mind. He suggests Leo could help, and the wolf eagerly offers his services. That night, Takumi reflects on their delicious dinner as Leo sleeps by the fire. He sits beside his loyal partner, his gaze drifting towards Clea's tent. His expression is filled with concern as he quietly wonders about her well-being. As evening falls, Philip suggests they decide on the night's watch schedule. Sebastian explains to a surprised Takumi that a watch is necessary in a forest full of monsters. Takumi realizes such precautions were never needed in his own peaceful world. Sebastian proposes that they should all take turns standing guard in shifts. He quickly lays out a rotation for himself and the guards: Philip, Johanna, Layla, and Nicola. Takumi listens, noticing that his name was not included in the schedule. He asks Sebastian if it's all right that he isn't standing watch. Sebastian assumes Takumi isn't accustomed to such hardships and tells him not to worry. Takumi insists, asking to be allowed to take a turn despite his inexperience. Leo, his giant companion, lets out a huge, supportive yawn beside him. With a bright smile, Takumi declares that his powerful partner, Leo, will be with him. Convinced by his determination, Sebastian warmly agrees to let him participate. Takumi and Leo look on, happy to be included in the night's duties. Sebastian officially announces that Takumi and Leo will take the first watch. He instructs them to start at the 10th hour and switch after 3 hours. Takumi checks his pocket watch, calculating his shift will end at the 13th hour. Suddenly, Clea stands up, declaring that she will also stand watch. Takumi looks over at her, completely surprised by her stubborn insistence. Sebastian immediately protests, reminding her how exhausted she is from their journey. Philip adds that if she is still tired tomorrow, they will have to turn back. The entire party, including Leo, looks on with expressions of deep concern. Clea looks down, unwilling to be the only one resting while everyone else works. Takumi gently tells her to rest well today in preparation for the next. He earnestly asks her to trust them with the watch, and she finally relents. Night settles over the forest, the sky filled with a smattering of distant stars. Takumi sits by the crackling campfire, leaning against Leo during his quiet watch. He gazes into the flames, wishing there was some way he could help Clea. The quiet moments of his watch tick by under the dark forest canopy. He checks his pocket watch, its hands clicking towards the end of his shift. He notes that he has about 1 more hour of guard duty left. From his post, he keeps a careful eye on the silent, sleeping camp. He and Leo suddenly turn their heads, having heard a sound from one of the tents. Clea emerges with a warm smile, praising them for their hard work on the watch. In the quiet of the night, the tent flap rustles open. Takumi, on watch with Leo, asks Clea if she was unable to sleep. With a gentle smile, she assures him that is not the case. She asks if she can join him, and he warmly invites her over. Settling by the crackling fire, she offers him a quiet thank you. A profound sadness seems to hang over her, dimming her usual bright spirit. They sit in silence for a moment, the firelight dancing between them. Takumi, sensing her mood, gently asks her what is wrong. As the fire pops, she hesitates before beginning to speak. She confesses that she came out specifically to talk with him. Her voice echoes over a wide view of their small, lonely campsite. Takumi seems surprised that she wanted to speak with him in particular. She quietly confirms this is what she wanted, her eyes cast downward. They sit together by the flames, with Leo resting as a silent guardian. Her hands clasped, she begins to address him formally. She thanks him for coming, though he says he was curious as well. But she insists, her expression earnest, that he must let her thank him. She says it's only because of his help that she could come here. He looks at her, understanding there is a deeper reason for her visit. He gently asks if there is something else she wishes to discuss. She admits it concerns her invitation for him to come to the forest. With a pained expression, she reveals that Sebastian scolded her for it. Sebastian told her she knew Takumi's kind nature would prevent him from refusing her. She apologizes, admitting she didn't give him a fair way to decline. Takumi admits he can't refuse requests, but says he was happy to come. She insists her actions were wrong for a member of a ducal house. Takumi is taken aback, repeating her words about her noble family. Her eyes are closed tightly, her face a mask of shame. Her hands clench into fists on her lap as she voices her regret. She confesses she committed a shameful act and cannot forgive herself. Her head bows low, her long hair hiding her face in her distress. Takumi watches her, his expression softening with empathy and concern. He thinks of his companion, a silent call for Leo in his mind. Takumi's simple compliment strikes Clea, leaving her flustered and speechless with a warm, fuzzy feeling. Clea looks down in surprise as Leo gently rests his head on her lap. Panel. By the campfire, Takumi suggests that Clea should pet Leo to calm down. Panel. A close-up of Clea's hand as she gently places it on Leo's fur. Panel. A relieved and gentle smile returns to Clea's face as she pets Leo. Panel. Takumi watches her with a soft, relieved smile, glad she feels better. Panel. Takumi reassures Clea, telling her that he doesn't hold anything against her. Panelia. Takumi earnestly explains that he was not forced into coming with her. Panel. A transitional panel showing the starry night sky above the dark forest treetops. Panel. Clea blushes, surprised and flustered by Takumi's charming and playful compliment. Panel. Completely flustered, Clea blushes deeply, unable to form a coherent response. Leo rests his large head on Clea's lap, comforting her. Panel. Takumi asks Clea if she is sure about his proposal. Panel. Takumi smiles, proposing a deal to settle the matter between them. Panel. A close-up of Clea's eye, showing her surprise at his suggestion. Panel. Clea agrees to Takumi's terms with a gentle, trusting smile. Panel. Clea begins her explanation, her expression serious as she looks away. Panel. Clea clarifies that her interest is in the silver fenrirs of this world. Panel. Takumi asks why she is interested in silver fenrirs, besides Leo. Panel. A grand mansion is shown as Clea explains a rumor started there. Panel. Takumi looks surprised and listens intently as Clea mentions the rumor. A baby Clea lies in an ornate bassinet, rumored to be a reincarnation. Panel. Tumbihiwar. Takumi listens intently by the fire, asking Clea if she remembers this time. Panel. Clea looks serious, explaining there are portraits of the first Duke's life. Panel. A wall of portraits shows the first Duke's life, mirroring Clea's appearance. Panel. Takumi asks if the first Duke was a woman, and Clea confirms it. Panel. Takumi thoughtfully processes the information that Clea grew up resembling the portraits. Panel. Clea is shown at various ages, fulfilling the servants' high expectations for her. Panel. Takumi sits by the fire with Clea and Leo, asking about her father. Panel. Clea smiles fondly, explaining that her father did not believe the rumors. Panel. A flashback shows a young Clea being told by her father to live freely. Takumi smiles warmly, gesturing as he speaks to Clea with a kind expression. Panel. Clea smiles serenely with her eyes closed, recalling her father's loving support. Panel. A shot of their dark campsite as Clea explains her lingering feelings. Suanari. Clea closes her eyes, hands over her heart, describing her deep emotional connection. Panel. A wide view of the forest as Clea explains her reasons for coming. Panel. Takumi gently suggests to Clea that Leo may be the only fenrir here. Panel. Takumi looks concerned, asking Clea if she is giving up on her search. Panel. Clea looks somber, explaining her reluctance to trouble others with her quest. Panel. Clea sits beside Leo, gently touching his fur as she quietly reflects. Panel. Takumi looks up thoughtfully, considering Clea's words about their failed search. Clea's hands are clenched in her lap as she expresses her inner turmoil. Panel. Takumi looks at Clea with concern as they sit by the campfire. Panel. Takumi reassures Clea, telling her he's glad she confided in him. Panel. Clea smiles warmly at Takumi, telling him that he is a kind person. Panel. Takumi laughs, asking Clea to keep their talk a secret as Leo barks. Panel. Clea gives a bright, grateful smile, thanking both Takumi and Leo. Panel. A transitional panel showing the treetops against the starry night sky. Panel. The guard Philip arrives, formally addressing Takumi and Lady Clea. Panel. Philip smiles as Clea agrees it's time for her to get some rest. Panel. A wider view of Philip arriving to relieve Takumi of his watch duty. Clea smiles gently, teasingly telling someone to get some proper rest. Panel. Clea looks up with a surprised and thoughtful expression at the guard. Panel. Philip, the guard, sits and reassures a concerned Clea with a smile. Panel. Clea looks surprised and blushes slightly at Philip's words of loyalty. Panel. A flustered Takumi asks Philip if he overheard their private conversation. Panel. Takumi awkwardly suggests they get some rest, while Clea looks down. Panel. Philip walks away from the campfire to begin his night watch duty. Panel. Takumi and Leo stand outside a tent, looking on with concern. Panel. A close-up of Takumi's hand hesitantly reaching for the tent flap. Panel. Takumi calls out to Clea as she begins to open her tent. Clea calls out to Takumi as he walks away from the campfire. Panel. Clea places several small, dark, star-shaped herbs into Takumi's open hand. Panel. Takumi explains the herb helps with sleep, confirming he made it with his gift. Panel. Clea asks Takumi to tell her about his research, and he cheerfully agrees. Panel. Against a backdrop of the dark forest, they wish each other good night. Panel. Inside the tent, the giant wolf Leo is curled up and fast asleep. Panel. Wani Wainchu. Takumi jolts upright in his sleeping bag, looking startled inside his tent. Panel. Takumi is startled to see Sebastian, who greets him from his sleeping bag. Panel. From behind, Takumi nervously asks Sebastian if he was listening to them. Panel. Sebastian admits he overheard, expressing surprise at the depth of Clea's worries. Lying in his tent, Takumi sincerely thanks Sebastian for listening to Clea's worries. Panel. Sebastian, turned away in his bedroll, expresses his own relief for Clea. Panel. From an overhead view, Takumi and Sebastian wish each other good night. Panel. A new day begins with a view of a misty mountain range at dawn. Panel. Waisfiri. A close-up shot of the rushing river as the group prepares to depart. Panel. Takumi looks determined, announcing with a smile that the search is starting. Panel. Wanedawa. At the campsite, Takumi gives instructions, dividing the party for the search. Panel. A close-up on their feet as the party begins walking on the forest floor. Panel. The group, including Leo, walks through the dark, dense woods. Panel. Sebastian looks back with concern, but Clea cheerfully reassures him she feels fine. Clea calls out to Takumi with a surprised and concerned expression. Panel. Clea happily thanks Takumi for the herb, saying she feels much better. Panel. Sebastian smiles, observing that the fatigue-curing herb has taken effect on Clea. Panel. Sebastian looks up at the dark forest canopy, commenting on the treacherous footing. Panel. Sebastian mentions that magic would be useful, and Takumi asks what he means. Panel. A bright orb of magical light illuminates the dark path through the forest. Panel. Sebastian holds the light, telling Takumi he could learn simple magic with practice. Panel. Takumi eagerly asks Sebastian to teach him magic when they return home. Panel. Clea excitedly interjects, offering to teach Takumi some magic herself. Panel. Sebastian smiles awkwardly as Clea looks at him, waiting for a response. Takumi humbly questions if he is fit to teach Clea about magic. Panel. Sebastian happily entrusts Clea's magic lessons to a flustered Takumi. Panel. On the second day, Takumi and Leo stand together in the forest. Panel. Two guards in armor kneel down to carefully examine the forest floor. Panel. A narrow panel showing the forest ground on the third day. Panel. A close-up shot of the party's crackling campfire at night. Panel. Sebastian reports to Takumi that they have found nothing after 3 days. Panel. Around the campfire, a disheartened Clea suggests the fenrirs are gone. Panel. A close-up of Clea's face looking weary and disappointed by their search. Panel. The great wolf Leo rests his head, listening as someone speaks of everyone. Takumi proposes they search for one more day before giving up. Sebastian asks Clea if she is sure about their decision to stop. Panel. Clea smiles sadly, saying everyone has done enough for her selfish request. Panel. The guards express concern about continuing the search while everyone is exhausted. Panel. Takumi reflects that everyone knows Clea's worries and wants to help her. Panel. Washomehi. Takumi observes Clea's gentle smile, thinking how loved she is by her staff. Panel. Takumi sits alone, deep in thought about how to help Clea's quest. Panel. A transitional panel shows the forest canopy, indicating the next day has begun. Panel. The next day, an exhausted Takumi leans against a tree, panting heavily. Panel. Takumi looks at Leo with a determined expression, asking what they should do. Panel. Takumi tells Leo he doesn't want to return home with no results. Leo happily puts a paw on a confused Takumi's shoulder, barking encouragingly. Panel. Takumi has a sudden, wide-eyed realization, remembering his weed cultivation gift. Panel. A confident Takumi explains his plan to use weed cultivation to help everyone. Panel. Takumi looks towards a surprised Sebastian and a listening Clea in the forest. Panel. A close-up of Clea's face, looking surprised and concerned as she speaks. Panel. Takumi addresses the entire party, explaining he forgot something important to their quest. Panel. Takumi explains to the guards how his gift can cure their fatigue. Panel. A guard skeptically questions if Takumi's herbs can actually help with their search. Panel. Takumi clenches his fist with determination, stating that they are running out of time. Pantalonto. Takumi thanks a happy Leo, saying the wolf helped him remember his ability. Takumi clenches his fist, determined to show them his research results. Panel. Takumi presses his hand firmly onto the ground to activate his power. Panel. Using his weed cultivation gift, Takumi makes a patch of herbs appear. Panel. Takumi proudly announces his success while Sebastian stares in complete astonishment. Panel. Takumi plucks a leaf from the patch of herbs he just created. Panel. Takumi offers the newly grown herbs to the rest of the weary party. Panel. Clea hesitantly takes a bite of the mysterious herb Takumi offered. Panel. The party is amazed as the herb instantly cures their exhaustion. Panel. Pleased with the results, Takumi prepares to offer them another herb. Panel. As night falls, Clea asks Takumi to extinguish his light spell. Sebastian explains that the poor visibility in the forest is not a problem. Panel. A wide panel shows the dark, dense forest as something is about to happen. Panel. A speech bubble indicates Takumi is about to use the medicinal herb. Panel. Takumi smiles confidently at Clea and Sebastian, ready to use his gift. Panel. A close-up of Clea's eyes shows her sudden shock and dawning realization. Penifying. Clea looks on in wonder, trying to understand what is happening to her. Panel. Clea's eyes are wide as she explains that she can suddenly see clearly. Panel. The group looks up in awe as the forest is magically illuminated. Panel. The magically brightened forest rustles as Clea notices a change in her hearing. Panel. Takumi smiles, confirming to a surprised Clea that this is the herb's second effect. Clea looks up into the dark forest, questioning the herbs she was given. Panel. Takumi explains the effects of the two herbs to a listening Sebastian and Leo. Panel. Clea realizes she can now sense the presence and sounds of nearby creatures. Panel. With renewed hope, Clea clenches her fist, determined to succeed today. Panel. The group moves through the dense forest with Takumi and Leo leading the way. Panel. Sebastian informs a pensive Clea that the sun is beginning to set. Panel. A close-up on Clea's eye shows her intense, unwavering concentration. Panel. The group is startled by the sound of Leo's sudden, loud barking. Takumi turns to Leo, asking what's wrong as the wolf continues to bark. Panel. Takumi translates Leo's warning, explaining that monsters are fighting up ahead. Takumi excitedly calls out to a panting Clea as Leo barks urgently. Panel. A stunned Clea announces that she has finally found the fenrirs. Panel. Sebastian and a guard look towards Takumi with expressions of disbelief and concern. Panel. A guard reasons that Leo's senses are sharp, enhanced by the herb's effect. Panel. Takumi looks serious and contemplative, wondering if fenrirs are truly in the forest. Panel. Leo barks urgently at Takumi, who understands the fenrirs are being attacked. Panel. Takumi asks what monster would attack a fenrir. Sebastian suggests it might be trolls. Panel. Takumi explains that trolls are weaker than fenrirs unless they attack in numbers. Panel 1 Nashoi. Sebastian confirms the monsters are trolls and that there are 5 of them. Panel. Clea determinedly declares they must help the fenrirs, despite the guard's protests. A guard protests to Clea, saying they are no match for 5 trolls. Panel 1 Fonan. A powerful rumbling sound effect fills the panel, indicating a shift in power. Wemani. Clea looks up with a surprised and hopeful expression, her eyes wide. Panel. Takumi smiles, confirming to Clea that Leo is ready and willing to fight. Panel. Clea bows deeply to Leo, formally asking for his help as he barks eagerly. Panel. A large, sharp sound effect indicates a sudden and incredibly fast movement. Panel. Takumi points forward, shouting for Leo to go on ahead into the battle. Panel. The group runs through the forest, Takumi sensing Leo fighting the trolls. Panel. Takumi smiles with pride and amazement as he senses Leo's incredible power. Arriving at the clearing, Takumi calls Leo's name with concern, seeing him over a fallen fenrir. In a forest clearing, Takumi walks ahead as Leo whines for attention. Panel. Takumi turns around with a surprised expression, calling out to Leo. Panel. A high-angle shot reveals the bodies of 2 dead fenrirs on the ground. Panel. A close-up shows the empty ground where a monster's body had been. Panel. The remains of a monster sizzle and dissolve into nothingness. Panel. Takumi, Clea, and Sebastian look down in shock at the empty space. Panel. Takumi asks Leo what happened as the wolf sits calmly nearby. Panel. Antoine. Clea looks at Takumi with a worried expression, asking about the fenrirs. Panel. A close-up on Leo's calm eye as he looks down at something. Panel. Leo lowers his head to gently sniff a piece of discarded clothing. Takumi looks on with a serious expression, asking Leo what he has found. Panel. A close-up of Clea's horrified face, her hands covering her mouth in shock. Panel. An injured fenrir pup lies on the ground, its eyes closed in pain. Panel. Clea expresses her horror at the sight of the bloodied and wounded fenrir pup. Panel. Leo sits solemnly behind a dead adult fenrir as Clea laments the tragedy. Panel. Clea, Sebastian, and Takumi look on in shared shock at the tragic scene. Panel. A close-up of Sebastian's grim expression as he assesses the dire situation. Panel. Sebastian kneels to examine the injured pup as Leo and Clea watch anxiously. Panel. A hand gently rests on the wounded fenrir pup's fur in a comforting gesture. Panel. Clea looks desperately at Sebastian, asking if there is any way to help. A close-up on Sebastian's eye, showing his grim and concerned expression. Panel. The small wounded fenrir pup looks up with wide and fearful eyes. Panel T. Sebastian delivers a grim diagnosis, his face filled with pained resignation. Panel. The group surrounds the dying pup as Sebastian expresses his hopelessness. Panel. A horrified Clea expresses her despair at finding a fenrir in this state. Panel. A determined close-up on the silver fenrir, Leo's eye as he whines. Panel. Leo looks at Takumi with a determined expression, communicating his desire to help. Panel. Leo gently nudges the wounded pup, showing his desire to save its life. Panel. Clea desperately asks if there is any way to save the pup. Takumi reminded Sebastian of the Ro plant's instant healing powers. Sebastian hesitated, knowing even Ro might not heal such grievous wounds. He looked toward Takumi, questioning what could be done for the dying pup. Takumi realized he could use his knowledge of the Ro plant as a guide. He resolved to create an herb powerful enough to heal a fatal wound. Placing his hand on the ground, a new powerful herb sprouted before him. He crushed a thick leaf, squeezing out the viscous, healing jelly within. The potent substance dripped from his fingers as he prepared the poultice. He turned to a worried Clea, assuring her that everything would be all right. He approached the small wounded fenrir pup, lying helpless on the ground. Taking a deep breath, he steadied himself for the momentous task ahead. Leo watched with concern as Takumi prepared to apply the magical herb. With a gentle touch, he pressed the poultice onto the pup's wound. The miraculous healing substance began to seep into the injured creature's fur. A brilliant ethereal light erupted from the pup, bathing the clearing in its glow. The light intensified, pulsing with a gentle, life-giving energy. The fenrir pup's ragged breathing evened out, becoming calm and peaceful. Sebastian gasped, his eyes wide with utter disbelief at the sight. He stammered that he couldn't believe it. The pup's breathing had stabilized. He observed that the creature's wounds were miraculously closing before his eyes. He turned to Takumi, declaring that he had completely healed the pup. Takumi looked back, a soft, relieved smile gracing his face. Leo barked triumphantly as Clea exclaimed that Takumi was amazing. Takumi modestly replied that it was just a bit of good luck. Still, he was deeply glad that he was able to save the small creature. Sebastian, ever practical, held up a blanket to wrap the recovering pup. He explained the pup had lost its strength and must be kept warm. The pup's ear twitched as it rested peacefully within the warm blanket. Sebastian noted that the fenrir was still just a child for its size. He speculated it was separated from its pack during the troll attack. He suggested it was time for them to start heading back to camp. Clea looked to him, asking what would become of the young fenrir. Leo let out a soft whine, getting Takumi's attention. Leo barked with purpose, communicating his desire to Takumi. Takumi listened intently, understanding his partner's unspoken wish. He announced to the group that Leo wanted to bring the fenrir home. Clea's eyes widened in surprise at the unexpected suggestion. She immediately declared that she was in favor of Leo's idea. Sebastian objected, arguing that fenrirs are ferocious monsters by nature. Clea pleaded with him, but Sebastian remained firm in his caution. Takumi stepped in, stating that he also agreed with taking the pup. He asked Sebastian if he remembered their conversation before entering the forest. He reminded him that Leo had assured them fenrirs wouldn't attack him. He added that a fenrir would never submit to a silver fenrir. Sebastian considered Takumi's words, his expression softening slightly. He conceded that Takumi's point was a valid one. Clea thanked him, but Sebastian held up a hand, not yet finished. He set a condition: if the pup harms anyone, it will be driven away. Clea happily accepted the terms, with Takumi and Leo looking on. With the matter settled, Sebastian smiled and suggested they return to camp. Clea gently stroked the pup, saying their quest was a success. Takumi reflected that she had probably hoped to meet a silver fenrir. Clea's hand rested gently on the sleeping pup's soft, white fur. She held the small creature close, whispering that it was safe now. She asked Leo if it was all right for her to carry the pup. Leo watched them, a gentle expression on his face as Clea held the pup. Takumi found it remarkable how much Leo cared for the young fenrir. He wondered if Leo saw his own past in the abandoned creature. Clea held the pup tightly, a serene smile on her face. She turned to the group and announced it was time for them to go home. Night fell over the forest, the stars twinkling in the clear sky. Back at camp, the guards were shocked to see the creature in Clea's arms. Clea explained that it was a cute fenrir pup that Leo had rescued. The two guards stared, their mouths agape in utter astonishment. The pup's eye fluttered open, awakening in an unfamiliar place. Clea asked if it was awake, but the pup was startled by its surroundings. It began to struggle frantically, its face a mask of pure terror. It let out a series of high-pitched yelps, trying to escape. Clea gently reassured the pup that Leo would protect it. She promised the frightened creature that she meant it no harm. Leo approached and spoke to the pup in a series of soft barks. Takumi watched as the two creatures seemed to have a full conversation. The campfire crackled, casting a warm glow on the clearing. The guards marveled that they actually brought a fenrir pup back with them. A bowl of food was set down for the now calm creature. The pup ate ravenously as the party relaxed around the fire. Takumi leaned against a large tree, observing the peaceful scene. He reflected on his new life with a silver fenrir and a fenrir pup. He mused that his dream of a slow life seemed further away than ever. The next morning, the sun shone brightly through the forest canopy. The party made its way through the final stretch of the woods. They reached the edge of the forest, and Clea happily announced their return. A guard spotted them, overjoyed to see they had returned safely. The guard noted that they had returned earlier than expected. Sebastian wryly replied that they found less than they had hoped for. The guard, confused, looked at the fenrir pup in Clea's arms. Sebastian explained they rescued a harmless fenrir, and the pup understood. They arrived at the waiting carriage, ready to head back to the villa. Takumi realized the carriage was too narrow for all of them to fit. Clea asked what was wrong, and he waved it off with a nervous smile. He suggested he ride Leo while Clea and Layla took the carriage. The fenrir pup suddenly leaped into his arms, refusing to be left behind. Takumi was startled as the pup clung to him affectionately. Clea smiled, noting how much the pup seemed to like him. Takumi asked the pup if that was true, and it let out a happy yip. Leo looked on as Takumi held the affectionate young fenrir. Layla hesitantly asked if she might also be allowed to ride Leo. She looked on with a hopeful, slightly nervous expression. Takumi agreed, saying Leo was fine with it, and helped her up. With everyone ready, Sebastian announced their departure for the villa. The rhythmic clatter of the carriage wheels marked their journey home. The sturdy coach rumbled along the dirt path, leaving the forest behind. Clea noted how cozy the narrow carriage was, a sentiment Takumi shared. He fondly recalled how his little dog Leo loved sleeping in tight spaces. Their carriage traversed the vast rolling hills of the Reveldt territory. Soon, the magnificent gates of the grand villa came into view. Leo's eyes snapped open, his senses suddenly on high alert. The great wolf stopped before the gate, his body tense and watchful. He stood proudly on the hill, surveying his new domain. From the window, Takumi and Clea wondered what Leo was doing. He took a deep breath, his powerful chest expanding. A long, resounding howl echoed across the entire landscape. Clea and the fenrir pup were startled by the sudden, powerful cry. A guard struggled to calm the horses, spooked by the sudden noise. Inside, the pup answered with a series of excited, high-pitched yips. Leo continued his call, his head tilted back towards the sky. The pup in the carriage responded with its own enthusiastic howls. With a final, deep resonance, Leo's powerful howl came to an end. Takumi, utterly perplexed, asked if the strange exchange was now over. Clea gently stroked the pup, asking what that was all about. Sebastian wondered aloud if the silver fenrir's howl was a warning. Leo sat peacefully, his silent declaration of territory complete. Takumi realized the howls were a form of communication between them. He recalled how it seemed Leo was talking to the pup before. The pup looked up at Leo with an attentive expression. Clea agreed, noting that it certainly looked like a conversation. Takumi leaned out the window to address his partner directly. He asked Leo what the meaning of the howling was. He explained Leo's message. This land was his territory now. Takumi understood. It was a formal declaration of his domain. He then asked his partner what the fenrir pup had said in reply. The pup, he relayed, had eagerly asked to join Leo's pack. Takumi turned to Clea, confirming this was their conversation. Clea mused that the howl was a ceremony to welcome a new packmate. She noticed the little pup had finally settled down completely. A gentle, knowing smile graced her lips. The pup, now officially part of the pack, slept peacefully. Upon arrival, the staff welcomed them home with a grand chorus. Takumi smiled, still impressed by the formal reception. Clea gently asked the staff to lower their voices for the pup. The small fenrir slept on, undisturbed by the commotion. Tilla rushed out, calling her sister and Takumi's names. She beamed, shouting a cheerful, "Welcome home," to the returning party. Clea smiled warmly, greeting her younger sister. Tilla's gaze immediately fell upon the sleeping creature in Clea's arms. Clea explained it was a fenrir pup they rescued from the forest. Tilla was captivated, exclaiming how adorable the little fenrir was. Clea gently reminded her to be a little quieter. The pup was injured, she explained, and needed plenty of rest. Tilla looked down with a pout, apologizing for her outburst. Clea told a nearby maid she was taking the pup to a room. The maid then turned to Takumi, asking what he planned to do. Takumi paused for a moment, considering his next move. He decided to go to his room and change his travel-worn clothes. The maid offered to prepare some tea for him in the guest room. Takumi called to Leo, telling his partner it was time to go. Later, Takumi returned to his room, feeling refreshed. The cheerful maid Gerda greeted him with a warm welcome back. He took a sip of tea, complimenting her on how delicious it was. Clea and Tilla soon arrived, apologizing for making him wait. They exchanged pleasantries, relieved the arduous forest journey was over. Nearby, Tilla was already playing happily with Leo and the pup. She was delighted that the little fenrir had finally woken up. Clea explained it had woken shortly after she returned to her room. She let out a small amused giggle. She imagined the pup was surprised to be in such a grand place. It had been curiously exploring every corner of the room. She confessed she found its inquisitive nature absolutely adorable. Takumi smiled, agreeing that it must have been a cute sight. He then remembered his promise to explain his gift to Clea. He paused, wondering how best to begin his incredible story. Suddenly, a violent wave of dizziness struck him without warning. His vision blurred and shook as Clea called out his name in alarm. He could hear their panicked voices, but he couldn't respond. He collapsed, a terrifying memory of his past burnout flashing in his mind. He awoke to a strange, weightless sensation of floating. His eyes fluttered open, blinking back into consciousness. He was met by the relieved cries of Clea and the others. He asked what was wrong, and Sebastian explained that he had collapsed. The memory returned. He had been talking with Clea when it happened. Still disoriented, he managed to offer a weak "good morning." Clea's worried expression softened into a warm smile. Leo, overjoyed, pounced on him with a flurry of slobbery licks. Takumi yelped, trying to fend off his overly affectionate partner. Sebastian explained that Leo had been worried, never leaving his side. Takumi laughed weakly, enduring the loving assault. Tilla giggled, remarking on the strange way he was being woken up. Clea asked if he could sit up, and he managed a weak yes. Later, they gathered in the guest room to discuss what had happened. Clea poured a cup of tea, her expression serious. She asked if he could remember anything from before he fainted. He recalled they were talking in that very room after their return. He described how his vision suddenly blurred and faded to black. Clea listened intently, understanding how terrifying that must have been. Sebastian then offered a grave theory. The collapse was due to his gift. He cited ancient texts that warned of the dangers of overusing gifts. Takumi was shocked to learn others had collapsed from their powers. Sebastian explained a special power, not mana, had likely been depleted. Takumi asked if such a power source truly existed. Sebastian admitted that since gift wielders are so rare, research is limited. A character recalls a conversation they had in the past. Sebastian suggests Takumi's collapse was caused by his gift. Takumi is doubtful, as he collapsed after returning home. Sebastian explains his research into the nature of gifts. Takumi thoughtfully considers the importance of a gift's duration. With a knowing look, Sebastian begins to state his hypothesis. He suggests the gift's power doesn't end with a plant's creation. Tilla asks if the herb wasn't the one that healed the pup. Sebastian confirms the herb glowed, a property not found in normal row. Takumi suddenly recalls the glow, admitting he hadn't thought of it. Sebastian then reveals another crucial piece of the puzzle. After Takumi fainted, the recovering fenrir pup also grew weak. The pup, now healthy, recalls its miraculous one-day recovery. A diagram shows power flowing from Takumi, sustaining the pup's healing. Takumi finally understands. As Sebastian stresses, it's just a theory. Clea, looking deeply concerned, asks him to avoid using his gift. Takumi realizes that even with this risk, his power is useful. With a firm expression, Clea absolutely forbids him from overdoing it. Takumi smiles warmly, thanking her for her sincere concern. Clea then asks about the results of his earlier garden experiments. He recalls the first time he tested his weed cultivation ability. He explains he created a new plant that wasn't in his book. He left the unknown leaf on a table, but Leo ate it that night. At the memory, Leo lets out a series of happy, enthusiastic barks. Takumi continues his story, with Clea and Sebastian listening intently. Leo barks again, confirming his enjoyment of the accidental treat. Takumi says that after eating it, Leo was suddenly full of energy. Clea is delighted, realizing he had created a powerful stamina herb. Takumi explains this discovery led to a new insight into his power. He usually visualizes a plant's form while looking at a book. Clea asks what he means, since he didn't know this herb's form. Sebastian realizes Takumi can create any plant simply by imagining its effect. Tilla and the pup cheer, exclaiming how incredible Takumi is. Sebastian cautions that this powerful ability could also be dangerous. Takumi agrees with a smile, saying he will think it over carefully. Clea declares that she still wants him to make herbs for them to sell. Takumi stands and gives a deep, formal bow, accepting her proposal. He agrees as long as he is careful not to collapse again. Clea's face lights up with pure joy at his acceptance. She takes his hands, thanking him on behalf of the entire ducal house. Clea excitedly tells Sebastian they must now speak with her father. Sebastian reminds her that the Duke will not be easily convinced. With a determined look, Clea resolves to face her father. Sebastian, fired up, vows to support her with all his might. Takumi then remembers that the rescued fenrir pup is still nameless. Sebastian agrees that it is inconvenient to not have a name for it. Takumi adds that a name might help the pup feel more at home. Sebastian suggests they first determine the pup's gender. Clea gently calls the pup, which happily trots over to her. Sebastian gently examines the small creature as Clea holds it. He announces the pup is a girl, much to Tilla's delight. Clea looks down at the pup, pondering a name that would suit her. She strokes its head, her eyes shining with sudden inspiration. She tells the pup she will find a name that is perfect for it. Sebastian enthusiastically suggests the name Nikamaru for the pup. Clea immediately rejects his idea, saying it's not a girl's name. Takumi gently pats the dejected butler on the back in consolation. Clea's face beams as she announces she has made her decision. She names the pup Sherry, meaning the one who is loved. She formally tells the Fenrir that from now on, she is Sherry. Sherry barks happily, seeming to accept her new name with joy. Suddenly, a brilliant light begins to glow between the two. Clea's eyes widen in shock as the magical light intensifies. The light flashes, causing Clea to flinch back in surprise. Sebastian and Tilla stare in awe at the miraculous display of magic. The entire room is bathed in an ethereal glow, startling everyone. Bright columns of light erupt, filling the room with power. Clea closes her eyes, feeling the warmth of the magical light. As the light fades, she wonders what just happened. Takumi is equally confused, questioning the mysterious phenomenon. The group looks at the pup, trying to understand the event. Takumi asks Leo if he knows what happened, but he is also confused. Sebastian's eyes widen as he realizes it must be a familiar contract. Clea looks on, stunned, as the incredible idea sinks in. Sebastian explains that a contract is forged when a monster accepts a name. He states that the brilliant light was proof of their new bond. Takumi finally understands what it means to have a familiar. Clea looks at Sherry, asking in disbelief if she is now her familiar. Tilla looks on with admiration, wishing she too had a familiar. Clea smiles at Takumi, saying that this is all thanks to him. She knows she never would have found Sherry without his help. Takumi tries to be modest, but Sherry's excited barks interrupt him. He kneels, saying he is just glad to see the pup so healthy. The next morning, bright sunlight streams through the windows. Takumi stretches, waking from a peaceful night of sleep. He sits up in bed and wishes a good morning to a sleepy Leo. Later, he finds the household staff bustling with unusual activity. He wonders aloud if something special is happening today. He enters the magnificent empty dining hall, set for breakfast. He and Leo cheerfully greet everyone with a good morning. Clea, already at the table, returns his greeting with a bright smile. Takumi notices Tilla is missing, and Clea explains she is sleeping in. Takumi mentions wanting to try his weed cultivation again. Clea's expression turns serious as she reveals something important is happening. The camera pans up the grand staircase, building the tension. With a worried look, she announces that her father is coming. Takumi is stunned, barely able to utter a questioning sound. It is revealed her father is the Duke, head of the Revolt House. Sebastian explains a messenger arrived. The Duke is coming to see Clea. He asks Takumi to recall how he first found Clea alone in the forest. Sebastian, his expression grave, explains that he acted just in case. Takumi looks on, realizing the butler had contacted the Duke directly. Sebastian clarifies that he sent another message once Clea was safe. Clea sighs, knowing that her father was already on his way. Takumi, confused by their dread, asks why they all look so serious. Clea and Sebastian groan, anticipating the marriage proposals her father will bring. Takumi innocently asks if she can't just refuse all of them. "Of course I will," Clea declares with fiery determination. She insists that Tilla is far too young for such things. And she, for one, has absolutely no intention of getting married. Sebastian reminds them that the Duke must meet Takumi to discuss business. Takumi grows nervous, admitting he knows nothing of noble etiquette. Clea laughs, assuring him that her father is surprisingly informal. Sebastian adds that the Duke can be described as quite boisterous. Takumi quietly wonders what kind of person this boisterous Duke is. When Tilla heard the news, she simply froze in apprehension. Her eyes are wide with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Takumi reflects on the complicated family dynamics he has stumbled into. A sudden thought strikes him as he sits alone in his room. He asks the maid Layla if his current attire is appropriate. Layla thinks the Duke wouldn't mind, but she has a suggestion. She reminds him of the custom suit he ordered in Ratosse. "That's right," Takumi exclaims, jumping to his feet with purpose. He decides those clothes would be much more suitable for the occasion. Layla observes that riding Leo would make the trip much faster. She smiles, noting they should have plenty of time if they hurry. Takumi turns and asks if Layla would like to come with him. She explains that she must go anyway to pay the tailor for him. Takumi, surprised by her duty, formally asks her to accompany him. Layla politely accepts, settling onto Leo's back behind Takumi. With a powerful leap, Leo carries them away from the villa. They travel swiftly under a bright sky dotted with fluffy clouds. Soon they arrive in the lively, bustling streets of the town. Leo's eyes sparkle with pure joy at the sight of a sausage stall. The giant wolf happily munches his treat as they walk the street. Layla spots their destination and gets Takumi's attention. "It's over there," she says, pointing towards a charming building. The tailor, Halton, greets them warmly as they enter his shop. He welcomes Takumi, informing him that his ordered clothes are ready. Takumi smiles with relief, glad that they are finished in time. Layla whispers that they made it just in time for the meeting. They arrive back at the Grand Revolt Villa with moments to spare. Dressed in his new dashing attire, Takumi announces their return. Clea greets them both with a bright smile, welcoming them home. She compliments his new clothes, noting he must have gone to Ratosse. Takumi beams, offering his sincere thanks for her kind words. Sebastian's expression grows serious as he announces the Duke has arrived. He tells a startled Clea that things are proceeding as anticipated. The entire household staff is assembled in the grand entrance hall. The head maid announces the arrival of Duke Eckenhart Revolt. Takumi realizes this powerful man must be the head of the house. Duke Eckenhart, a man of immense presence, strides into the hall. A staff member welcomes him, apologizing for having worried him. Clea and Tilla welcome their father home, relieved to see him. The Duke emotionally declares that Clea has grown even more beautiful. Clea reminds him that he is making a scene in front of everyone. Sebastian explains that the Duke received word of her safety en route. The Duke wipes a tear, admitting he spurred his horse on ahead. Clea is touched by the depth of her father's concern for her. The Duke's gaze then falls upon the unfamiliar young man. Clea introduces Takumi as the one who came to her rescue. Takumi steps forward, preparing to formally introduce himself. He gives a deep, respectful bow, stating his name is Haruka Takumi. The Duke invites him to simply call him Takumi, sizing him up. His stern face breaks into a grin as he thanks Takumi profusely. The Duke's eyes narrow slightly as he studies the young man. He claps Takumi's shoulder, impressed that the boy didn't flinch. Tilla gently reminds her father that his grip is probably painful. The Duke's attention is suddenly drawn to movement at his feet. He sees the small fenrir pup Sherry peeking out from hiding. His mind races, connecting the pup to the silver fenrir in the report. A sharp gasp escapes him as a shocking realization dawns. His eyes dart between the legendary Leo and the small fenrir pup. He drops to the ground, demanding everyone show proper respect. Clea and Tilla stare in utter shock at their father's behavior. The Duke introduces himself to Leo with a deep formal bow. Takumi stands bewildered as the powerful noble prostrates himself. Clea pleads with her father to rise, assuring him Leo is fine. Takumi joins in, urging the Duke to please stand up. Sebastian restores order, suggesting they continue their talk inside. The Duke grunts his assent, finally rising from the marble floor. The fenrir pup, Sherry, peeks out from behind a nearby door. The Duke watches as Clea calls out the pup's name, Sherry. Clea proudly introduces Sherry as her new fenrir familiar. The Duke realizes they have a great many things to discuss. In the parlor, the Duke listens intently to their incredible story. He nods, acknowledging that he now understands the situation. He declares that with Leo present, their unbelievable tale must be true. However, he asks if Leo is truly not hostile towards people. Takumi smiles, assuring him that Leo is very friendly and gentle. He turns to his partner for confirmation, asking, "Right, Leo?" The Duke closes his eyes, accepting Takumi's sincere reassurance. He suddenly stands up from the sofa with renewed purpose. He gives Leo a deep bow, formally asking for his acquaintance. His mood then shifts, causing Clea to flinch in anticipation. He cheerfully announces that he has brought more marriage proposals. He encourages his daughters to at least meet the selected young men. Takumi looks on, completely lost by the sudden turn of events. The Duke tells him to drop the formal address, as it's not his style. Takumi asks the Duke why he is so insistent on the marriage meetings. Duke Eckenhart looks at Takumi with a pained expression, asking if he hasn't heard this story. He turns to his daughter, reminding a startled Clea that this all started because of her. The Duke insists that this was entirely his daughter Clea's idea from the very beginning. He begins to recall a time nearly 10 years ago when Clea was fascinated by the first Duke. He reveals she declared she wanted an arranged marriage, to Clea's utter mortification. He remembers her childishly vowing to find her own marriage partner if she was ever troubled. Clea, horrified, presses her hands to her face, claiming she doesn't remember any of it. The Duke is shocked, but then sadly suggests she may have forgotten due to her mother's death. Takumi quietly asks if he's speaking of their mother, and the Duke confirms with a sad nod. Clea whispers that she has no memory of her mother at all. Her father reassures her, saying it's understandable since Tilla was just a baby then. The Duke's expression darkens as he remembers that difficult time. He explains that his beloved wife had been born with a frail constitution. She had somehow survived the dangerous birth of their first daughter, Clea. But when Tilla was born, her strength gave out and she passed away soon after. The family was left to grieve in the grand but empty halls of their home. The Duke recalls his wife was deeply satisfied to have brought 2 daughters into the world. Clea, her voice soft, asks if her mother was truly happy with her life. He remembers her smiling face, happy and content to have given birth to them both. A single silent tear escapes from Clea's eye at the beautiful, painful memory. Overcome with emotion, Clea begins to cry as Tilla watches with concern. The Duke gazes at his daughter, his heart aching with a shared sorrow. Leo watches the emotional scene unfold from his spot across the parlor. Clea sniffles, trying to compose herself before speaking to her father again. She apologizes for not remembering, even though she knows she can't change the past. He gently tells her not to worry, as it was just her childhood interest in their ancestor. Clea offers him a radiant, grateful smile, thanking him for his understanding. Sebastian smoothly suggests that they can now consider the marriage proposals to be canceled. Clea clenches her hands, a new resolve hardening in her eyes. She declares with all her heart that she wants to choose her own partner. Tilla, inspired, shoots her hand up, excitedly telling her father she wants to as well. The Duke sits in stunned silence, taking in his daughter's unified declaration. He closes his eyes for a moment, considering their passionate plea. He agrees with them, and both girls light up with triumphant joy. Sebastian announces that he will personally contact the suitors and cancel the meetings. The Duke admits he only did it to teach Clea about men, a lesson no longer needed. Clea realizes her father's true motive, as Tilla celebrates their victory. The Duke tells Leo not to mind them, as they are just being silly. Both Clea and Tilla turn to their father, thanking him for finally understanding. Clea then glances shyly at Takumi, starting to confess her current feelings. The Duke catches her glance, a sly, knowing look crossing his face. Sebastian quickly interrupts, loudly proclaiming it's nothing, as a confused Tilla looks on. The Duke agrees, deciding to drop the sensitive subject for the time being. He asks Sebastian if his room is ready, as he wishes to rest for a while. Sebastian confirms with a warm smile that everything has been prepared for him. But before the Duke can leave, Sebastian stops him, saying there is one more thing. He announces that they must discuss the matter of Takumi's incredible gift. The Duke's expression turns serious as the conversation shifts to business. Takumi looks on, knowing the discussion is now about his special power. The Duke confirms the gift is weed cultivation and says they must explain the contract. Clea excitedly tells her father that Takumi can create many kinds of valuable herbs. She recounts how he first made ramogi for Tilla, then experimentally grew ro. The Duke is utterly shocked to hear that he created the legendary ro plant. He asks if she means the high-grade herb, and she confirms Takumi made it easily. Takumi is surprised by the Duke's powerful reaction to the news about the ro. Clea adds with a proud smile that he created many other useful herbs besides that one. Sebastian explains that Takumi is constantly researching, creating plants he's never seen before. He adds that both he and Clea have personally confirmed the herb's potent effects. The Duke thoughtfully concludes that the weed cultivation gift is remarkably useful. His gaze sharpens, and he asks what the purpose of this discussion is. He knows that this story must be leading to a significant business proposal. Sebastian confirms they are considering a sales contract, which Takumi also wants. He points out the immense profit the ducal house stands to gain from such a venture. The Duke turns his intense gaze on Takumi, asking if this is what he truly wants. He states that a contract cannot be formed without the full consent of the person involved. Takumi prepares to give his honest answer directly to the powerful Duke. He explains that he doesn't want profit, only for his gift to be useful to them. The Duke is taken aback by the young man's sincere and selfless words. Takumi holds his gaze, his expression firm and unwavering despite his nervousness. The Duke's stern face breaks into a small, appreciative smile. He then erupts into a booming, hearty laugh that fills the entire room. Takumi thinks to himself that the Duke has incredible nerve to speak so directly. Clea, seeing her father's approval, knows this is the perfect time to make her move. The Duke officially declares that they will form a business contract with Takumi. He instructs Sebastian to prepare the formal documents for Takumi to review. Takumi beams, thanking Eckenhart for the incredible opportunity he has been given. The Duke shakes his hand firmly, welcoming him as their newest business partner. Later that evening, Takumi finds himself alone, reflecting on the day's events. He sits on the edge of his bed, the weight of his new reality sinking in. He muses that Eckenhart is a true noble, but a good man at heart. Leo pads over to his master, nudging him affectionately for attention. Takumi smiles and begins to pet his loyal partner's soft white fur. He happily scratches behind the great wolf's ears, enjoying the quiet moment. His hand pauses as he notices something clinging to Leo's fur. He looks closer, telling Leo that he has gotten quite dirty from their travels. With a wide grin, he declares it's bath time, much to Leo's whining dismay. As he's sitting with Leo, a polite knock sounds at his bedroom door. It is Sebastian, asking if he has a moment. Takumi says it is fine. The butler enters the room with a formal, respectful bow. He asks if Takumi was playing with Leo, and Takumi asks what he needs. Sebastian presents him with a formal document, explaining that this is the contract. Takumi takes the papers, looking at the elegant but unfamiliar script with curiosity. He wonders to himself why he is always able to read this world's language as Japanese. Sebastian tells him not to worry about that now. This is their business agreement. He explains that the document details the terms of their partnership for selling the herbs. Takumi agrees to read it carefully, acknowledging the importance of the details. Sebastian asks if he has any questions or would like to request any changes. Suddenly, the door clicks open and the Duke enters, calling out for Takumi. He bows deeply, shocking everyone, wanting to thank him again for saving his daughters. Takumi quickly tries to stop him, insisting that Leo was the one who did the real saving. In the grand bathhouse, Takumi tries to explain that he healed Tilla by accident. The Duke insists that doesn't change the fact he saved her, and he is grateful. With a serious expression, the Duke admits he has another concern on his mind. He turns his gaze to the great wolf, asking if Leo-sama is angry with him. Takumi is baffled, questioning why his good-natured partner would ever be angry. As if on cue, Leo pops up behind him with a happy, panting grin. The Duke clutches his chest in profound relief, glad to hear Leo isn't upset. Sebastian reminds his lord that he had already assured him they wouldn't be offended. The Duke explains he needed to confirm his own attitude hadn't been disrespectful. He apologizes for his strange behavior, but Takumi cheerfully waves it off. The Duke looks on, his expression one of deep gratitude and respect for the boy. Later, after a fine meal, the family gathers in the formal dining hall. Sebastian asks Takumi if he has had a chance to review the business contract. The Duke, seated at the head of the table, asks if the contents are acceptable. Takumi, holding the document, asks if he might pose a few questions about the terms. Leaning forward with interest, the Duke encourages him to ask whatever he likes. In the background, Tilla happily pets Leo and her familiar, Sherry. After a few clarifications, the Duke asks if that is the extent of his questions. He is impressed, noting that Takumi has clearly read and understood the entire document. Takumi gets to his main point, stating the contract seems overwhelmingly favorable to him. Clea beams with pride, explaining that she and Sebastian drafted it with his interests in mind. Sebastian adds that the generous terms reflect the immense profit they anticipate. The Duke explains that selling herbs is a new venture for them, one with guaranteed success. Takumi listens intently, asking if that is the reason for their generosity. The Duke warns that other nobles would surely try to exploit him without their protection. Takumi processes this, his gaze steady as he considers the weight of their words. Scratching the back of his head, he admits he never expected such amazing conditions. He then announces that he has just one condition of his own that he'd like to add. Clea is surprised but says they can likely accommodate a reasonable request. Takumi makes his humble request to be allowed to continue staying at the mansion. The Duke, Sebastian, and Clea are all rendered completely speechless by his simple wish. The tense silence is shattered as the Duke erupts into a booming, joyous laugh. Clea feels she braced for nothing, while Sebastian smiles, saying that's just like Takumi. Duke Eckenhart boisterously invites Takumi to stay, and Clea passionately agrees, wanting him there forever. The Duke insists that Takumi is welcome to stay with them, regardless of any formal contract. Overwhelmed by their kindness, Takumi asks if they are truly certain he can stay with them. Clea, Sebastian, and the Duke all enthusiastically confirm that of course he is welcome to stay. Deeply moved by their unconditional acceptance, Takumi offers his most sincere and heartfelt thanks. With a confident flourish of a pen, the formal business contract is officially signed and sealed. The agreement is now finalized, and Takumi reminds a very dirty Leo that it is bath time. The following day, Takumi prepares to demonstrate his weed cultivation gift for Duke Eckenhart. In the courtyard, Sebastian approaches Takumi, presenting him with a list of requested items. Takumi correctly identifies the papers as the official order form for the new medicinal herbs. The list details all the specific and rare medicinal herbs the ducal house wishes to procure. He is stunned to read that a single leaf of the rare rose plant is incredibly valuable. Realizing he doesn't understand the currency, he decides to ask Sebastian about its value later. Given the ease of his ability, Takumi asks if the quantity of herbs on the order is small. Sebastian clarifies the order: 10 rose leaves and 20 each of 8 other types of herbs. He then reminds Takumi that they must be cautious, remembering his recent collapse from overuse. Clea agrees, stating they must observe his condition as they don't yet know his limits. She also points out that he is still in the process of researching his unique gift. Takumi is visibly moved by their genuine concern for his health and safety above all else. He offers them his sincere gratitude for being so wonderfully considerate of his well-being. Feeling confident, he declares that he will now demonstrate his weed cultivation power for them. Duke Eckenhart tells Takumi he is counting on him, and Takumi eagerly accepts the challenge. He kneels, placing his hand just above the earth to activate the power of his gift. Instantly, a massive and healthy rose plant bursts forth from the ground right before him. Soon, the entire patch of ground is filled with a lush variety of different herbs. He calmly consults his book amidst the magical garden he has just created from nothing. Duke Eckenhart stares in utter astonishment, his expression a mixture of shock and profound awe. Takumi offers a small, humble smile, almost embarrassed by the incredible display of his power. Sebastian begins his inventory, asking if all the herbs on the order list have been grown. Clea approaches Takumi, her first concern being whether he is feeling all right after the exertion. He smiles warmly, reassuring her that creating this many herbs was not a strain at all. The Duke murmurs to himself that weed cultivation is truly an incredible and powerful ability. He cannot believe how easily the incredibly rare and valuable roe plant was brought into existence. Duke Eckenhart knelt, marveling at the herbs. He knew this ability would be a great benefit for his family. He stood and offered his formal thanks to Takumi for the demonstration. Takumi smiled, saying he was happy his power could help the people who had been so kind to him. Sebastian approached, confirming that every item on the order list had been perfectly created. The Duke grinned, thanking Sebastian for the good news and confirming the successful harvest. As Takumi began gathering the plants, the Duke wondered why he was harvesting them himself. Takumi plucked a leaf, explaining that it was simply more convenient if he did it. Sebastian then revealed another amazing facet of the weed cultivation gift. It didn't just grow plants, but created them in their most optimal state for use. The Duke was stunned, asking if such a thing was even possible. The Duke, Takumi, and Sebastian sat among the many sacks of freshly harvested herbs. The Duke's expression turned serious as he asked if Takumi could use a sword. Takumi admitted he only swung the sword in the forest and had no real skill. The Duke considered this, his expression thoughtful as he stroked his beard. His eyes narrowed with determination. He told Takumi that he would need to learn some method of self-defense. Clea noted that Leo was always with him, questioning the need for extra protection. The Duke warned that their new business would attract dangerous people who would target Takumi. Takumi looked surprised, asking if that was truly the case. The Duke explained that anyone would want the source of a guaranteed successful business. Sebastian added that no matter how careful they were, information would inevitably leak. Takumi wondered if people would go to such lengths for mere medicinal herbs. The Duke corrected him, stating it was far more than that. He explained that many people suffer without medicine, making Takumi's ability incredibly valuable. Takumi swallowed hard, realizing his power to create cures and poisons made him a target. The Duke declared that Takumi needed to learn to protect himself outside the mansion. A close-up showed the Duke's determined gaze. Takumi accepted this reality, knowing he would sometimes be separated from Leo. With new resolve, he asked Eckenhart what he should do to learn to use a weapon. The Duke grinned, pointing at Takumi and declaring he would personally teach him the sword. Takumi was stunned, asking if the great Duke Eckenhart himself would be his teacher. Clea sighed, lamenting that her father's bad habit of training promising individuals had resurfaced. Sebastian then revealed the Duke's true skill, a top-class swordsman, leaving Takumi speechless. Duke Eckenhart laughs heartily, musing that the knight's captain's training has been insufficient. Duke Eckenhart explains his duties to Takumi and Tilla during a training break. Panel. The Duke explains the importance of sword training to a surprised Takumi. A close-up of Duke Eckenhart's hand firmly gripping Takumi's shoulder with determination. Panel. The Duke enthusiastically tells a shocked Takumi that his training will begin immediately. Panel. Clea rushes over, frantically telling her father that Takumi just collapsed from overexertion. Panel. Sebastian, holding clothes, advises the Duke that Takumi should rest for the day. Panel. The Duke insists on starting soon, as a worried Clea reluctantly agrees. Panel 1. Duke Eckenhart looks at Takumi with a determined expression, delaying training until tomorrow. Panel. In his room, Takumi sits thoughtfully with Leo, contemplating learning to use a sword. Panel. Takumi stands nervously but agrees to the Duke's plan as Clea watches. Panel 1. Takumi smiles warmly, petting Leo's snout and promising to do his best. Panel. Sebastian knocks on the door, asking for permission to enter Takumi's room. Sebastian smiles warmly, explaining he has brought something for Takumi. Panel. A close-up of a short sword as Takumi recognizes it. Panel. Sebastian presents the clean short sword to a surprised Takumi. Panel. Sebastian gestures that he has something else, leaving Takumi looking confused. Panel. Takumi accepts a small pouch, understanding it is his payment. Panel. A large pile of coins spills onto the table, surprising Takumi. Panel. Takumi has a sudden realization about his new financial situation. Panel. Takumi asks the formal Sebastian to explain this world's currency. Panel. Sebastian smiles, remembering Takumi is from another world and happily agrees. Panel. Sebastian begins his lesson, pointing to the lowest value iron coin. A close-up shows a hand holding a single detailed copper coin. Panel. Sebastian explains the currency system to a seated Takumi, showing a silver coin. Panel. Takumi listens as a graphic shows 10 silver coins equal 1 gold coin. Panel. Takumi points to the coins on the table and asks Sebastian a question. Panel. Dialogue bubbles explain why gold coins are impractical for everyday shopping. Panel. Takumi, hand to his chin, mentally converts the currency to Japanese yen. Panel. A close-up on Takumi's wide eyes as a shocking realization dawns on him. Panel. Takumi looks shocked as he remembers the high value of the raw herb. Panel. The pile of coins on the table represents an incredibly large sum of money. Panel. Takumi sweats nervously, recalling Sebastian's comment about the value of the raw plant. Sebastian explains to Takumi the cost of building a house in Ratosse. Panel. Sebastian discusses Takumi's compensation, but Takumi insists the offered payment is already far too generous. Holding his first earnings, Takumi asks Sebastian about the cost of the gifts he'd purchased earlier. The kind butler tells Takumi he shouldn't trouble himself over such a small debt. Takumi is firm, explaining he needs to repay the loan for his own peace of mind. Sebastian smiles warmly, remarking on how earnest and honorable the young man is. The butler then leans in close to discreetly whisper the amount of the debt. With business concluded, Sebastian takes his leave, promising to see him again at dinner. Later, Takumi relaxes in his room, his massive and loyal companion Leo resting nearby. He smiles with grim satisfaction, contemplating the truly formidable power of his high-grade herbs. During dinner, a determined Clea formally approaches her father at the head of the table. She stands before him and asks if she, too, might be allowed to begin sword training. The Duke asks for her reasoning, while a shocked Clea exclaims her sister's name. Clea explains that she feels she absolutely must have a familiar of her own. She passionately declares that to do so, she must first become strong enough to fight. Clea looks at her younger sister, her expression filled with a deep, loving concern. She gently takes Tila's small hands into her own, trying to reason with her. Clea explains that getting a familiar isn't as simple as just learning to fight. She notes that Sherry becoming her familiar was a very special and unique circumstance. Tila counters that it was only possible because of the help from Takumi and Leo. Her father demands a real reason for her desire, not just a simple childish whim. Tila looks down, admitting that she can't clearly articulate her exact reasons. But she looks up with conviction, insisting it is a powerful and undeniable feeling. Takumi understands that this is not a wish, but a profound sense of mission. The Duke is reminded of his late wife, seeing her unwavering spirit in his daughter. Clea also recognizes her own deep convictions reflected in her younger sister's words. The Duke stands, challenging Tila by asking if a monster would ever follow the weak. He slams his hand down on the grand dining table to emphasize his powerful point. Uncowed, Tila shouts back with conviction that she completely understands his meaning. He warns her of the pain and hardship of training, but Tila accepts the challenge. The Duke relents with a sigh, agreeing that learning self-defense is a worthy goal. Tila's face brightens with pure joy as her father finally agrees to teach her. Overcome with happiness, she throws her arms around her father in a grateful hug. Clea watches the emotional scene unfold with a fond and slightly exasperated sigh. Clea gently reminds her younger sister that while sword training is important, her studies cannot be neglected. Tila looks up at her older sister with eyes full of pure, unrestrained adoration. As the Duke pats a beaming Tila's head, he looks to Takumi and vows to do his best. The soft light of a new day begins to filter through the grand villa's windows. Inside his room, Takumi's massive companion, the silver fenrir Leo, is still sound asleep. Takumi emerges from his bed with a wide, jaw-cracking yawn, stretching as he awakens. He muses to himself that perhaps he has woken up a little too early this morning. A polite knock sounds at his door, a small voice asking if he is already awake. Opening the door, he finds young Tila looking up at him and asks what she needs. She explains she woke too early and was bored, as her familiar Sherry was still asleep. Takumi glances with understanding toward his own magnificent, still sleeping companion on the floor. He apologizes that Leo is also asleep, but Tila insists it is fun just to watch him. She quietly approaches, her hand hovering just above the legendary wolf's soft silver fur. In a hushed voice, she confesses that she is feeling a little nervous about today's training. Takumi reassures her that it is natural to feel that way, admitting he is nervous too. Tila looks up, surprised to learn he is just as apprehensive as she is. He explains that being formally taught the sword is a truly intimidating prospect for him. They share a small smile, finding comfort in the knowledge they are in this together. Leo finally stirs with a sleepy groan, and Takumi greets his partner a good morning. Duke Eckenhart appears in the doorway, announcing it is time for their training to begin. The Duke declares the start of their training, and Tila eagerly asks for his instruction. In the vast courtyard, the Duke announces their first lesson, how to properly hold a sword. He demonstrates with a sharp, practiced motion, his gloved hand gripping the hilt firmly. Takumi holds the heavy ornate sword, thinking to himself that it must be very expensive. Takumi steels himself for the lesson, and Tilla eagerly echoes his determination to begin. With a look of intense concentration, Tilla struggles to hold her own sword steady. Her father gently adjusts her grip, telling her that she now has the correct form. He instructs them to always be conscious of which way the blade is facing as they swing. Takumi watches the effortless display of skill, completely mesmerized by the Duke's power. The Duke demonstrates another powerful swing, and an eager Tilla tries to mimic him. Tilla puts all of her small frame strength into the swing, a mighty effort. The heavy sword's recoil sends a violent, jarring shockwave up through her arms. She trembles from the painful impact, tears in her eyes as she cries out that it hurts. Duke Eckenhart begins the lesson as Takumi and a nervous Tilla hold swords. Panel. Takumi responds with a determined and enthusiastic expression, ready for his training. Panel. The Duke calls a halt as Takumi and Tilla pant, exhausted from swinging. Panel. The Duke thoughtfully observes that they are both inexperienced with their swords. Panel. A close-up on the Duke's serious eyes as he assesses their abilities. Panel. The Duke announces they will start with basic training to build physical strength. Panel. Tilla and Takumi listen as she asks what kind of training they'll do. In Penui Yuruna. An exterior shot of the villa as narration describes their grueling training. Panel. The Duke watches as Takumi and Tilla struggle to do push-ups. Takumi and Tilla strain to do sit-ups, looking exhausted from their training. Panel. Tilla and Duke Eckenhart run while Takumi catches his breath after training. Panel. Completely exhausted, Takumi and Tilla collapse on the ground as the Duke watches. Panel. A close-up on Takumi's eye as he has a sudden, brilliant idea. Panel. Takumi approaches Duke Eckenhart with a request, interrupting their training break. Panel. The Duke agrees to Takumi's request, who thanks him with a smile. Panel. Takumi kneels, placing his hand on the ground to use his gift. Panel. Tilla curiously asks about the herb, and Takumi explains its fatigue-curing properties. Panel. Duke Eckenhart and Tilla react with disgust after tasting the bitter herb. Panel. The Duke and Tilla complain about the herb's terrible, bitter taste. Tilla looks confused and surprised, sweating as she notices a strange feeling. Panel. Tilla's eyes widen with sparkling amazement as she realizes the herb's powerful effect. Panel. Tilla expresses her shock, feeling light and ready to continue training. Panel. Duke Eckenhart grins, declaring that they can now train even more intensely. Panel. Takumi and Tilla look on in horror, realizing the Duke's intense new plan. Panel. The Revolt Villa is shown as their training regimen is greatly intensified. Panel. Several days later, a hand lies on the ground, its owner panting heavily. Panel. Clea smiles kindly, offering a towel to the exhausted Takumi during a break. Panel Huron. Takumi, sweaty and tired, looks up as Clea asks if he is all right. Panel. From above, Takumi sits exhausted on the ground, thanking Clea for her concern. Takumi sits, wiping sweat from his face and smiling apologetically at Clea. Panel. A close-up of Clea's face shows her looking on with a gentle expression. Panel. Clea's hands are clasped in her lap as she expresses her thoughts. Panel. Takumi looks at Clea, slightly confused and hesitant to speak. Panel. Clea earnestly explains to Takumi that she couldn't stop her father's training. Panel. Clea wishes Takumi had guards so he would not have to endure such hardship. A guard would ensure his safety, she explains, even when Leo is not present. Her wide, earnest eyes clearly show the depth of her genuine concern for him. Takumi looks at her thoughtfully, quietly processing her words and saying her name. He recognizes her kindness, understanding that she is simply worried about his well-being. With quiet determination, he explains that he has no intention of stopping his training. He struggles internally, trying to find the right words to explain his true feelings. He looks at her again, his expression earnest as he begins to explain himself. He declares with firm conviction that he will not give up on learning the sword. He explains that relying on others would be a burden, and he hates just being protected. She insists it is no bother, as being protected by the great Leo is an honor. She reminds him that Leo is, after all, the strongest of all monsters. He falls silent for a moment, gathering his thoughts before sharing a personal memory. He asks if she remembers him telling her that his partner used to be small. She recalls their earlier conversation, her eyes wide with sudden understanding and surprise. Before coming to this world, he explains, he was the one protecting his small dog. A memory shows tiny Leo, whose simple presence was all Takumi needed for happiness. In a way, he concludes with a warm smile. They were protecting each other. He closes his eyes, a gentle, nostalgic smile on his face. lost in the memory. Clea observes that he has such a kind expression when he speaks of Leo. Flustered, he insists he cannot be a true partner if he is always protected. He feels Leo is not a familiar to simply command, as he is not used to it. He wants to be able, at the very least, to protect himself from danger. He panics, begging her not to tell her father about his motivations for training. He leans in, asking her to keep their conversation a secret between just them. The idea of a secret between them sends her into a blushing, flustered shock. As she steams with embarrassment, a confused Takumi asks if she is all right. Recovering, she declares she understands his feelings and will now support him instead. Tilla and the Duke announce that his short break from training is now over. Takumi turns and calls back to them, saying that he is on his way. Slinging the towel over his shoulder, he tells Clea that he is heading back. Inspired by him, Clea vows to also do her best for herself and her family. He cheerfully waves goodbye, thanking her for the towel as he leaves to train. Clea beams, her eyes closed in a radiant smile as she gives her cheerful agreement. Takumi turns and walks away from Clea, heading across the vast sunlit courtyard. He clutches a towel in his fist, his expression hardening with quiet resolve. With a final look back, he vows to himself that he will do his best. Several days later, Duke Eckenhart announces a sudden and shocking mock battle. Sebastian asks how they will conduct the duel, Clea watching with a worried look. The Duke explains it will be a sword match and he will be attacking as well. Tilla and Takumi realize with a jolt that it will be a real combat-style test. Clea expresses her concern, but her father insists he's only testing Takumi's growth. The Duke takes his stance, telling Takumi that he may make the first move. Takumi accepts the challenge, agreeing to come at his teacher with everything he has. He closes his eyes, focusing on his training and the countless practice swings he's made. The Duke notes that his student has become skilled, but it is not yet enough. With a casual parry, the Duke easily deflects Takumi's attack, sending him stumbling. Not nearly good enough, the Duke grunts, as Takumi curses his own weakness. Takumi's eyes widen in shock as his opponent's blade slips past his defenses. The Duke warns that if he drops his sword, he will be completely defenseless. With this, the Duke says, preparing to deliver the final decisive blow. He presses the flat of his training sword against Takumi's throat, ending the match. The Duke declares that for all intents and purposes, Takumi has now died once. Wide-eyed and sweating, Takumi thanks his teacher for the brutal but important lesson. Suddenly, a furious roar erupts as Leo launches himself between the two men. Takumi screams his partner's name in a panic, his face a mask of shock. The Duke stammers Leo's name, his composure broken by the legendary beast's appearance. Leo glares at the Duke with pure, unadulterated fury, a low growl rumbling. The Duke realizes with a start that the wolf thought its master was being attacked. Takumi desperately shouts at Leo, trying to snap him out of his protective rage. He explains that it was only training and that the Duke is now in danger. He reassures Leo that it's natural for him to lose, as he's still weak. The Duke watches, still shaken, as Leo finally calms down, looking at Takumi with confusion. Takumi apologizes to the Duke, asking if he is all right after the sudden scare. He explains it was a misunderstanding, as Leo affectionately nuzzles a relieved Tilla. The Duke drops to one knee, bowing to Leo and asking for his forgiveness. A cheerful voice calls out Takumi's name, causing him to turn in surprise. Clea explains that Leo was simply startled when he saw the sword near her father. Sebastian muses that this must be the legendary silver fenrir that appears with the wind. A gentle, knowing smile spreads across Takumi's face as he understands his partner's heart. He tells Leo he was only trying to help, apologizing for making him worry. With a gentle pat, he thanks his loyal partner for his unwavering concern. The sharp sound of steel echoes as another training sword is sent flying. Across the yard, Tilla's own training session with her father comes to an end. Exhausted but resolute, Tilla holds her ground, her face beaded with sweat. The Duke declares her training over, and Tilla bows deeply in gratitude. His hand tightens on his sword, a silent acknowledgement of her determined effort. The Duke watches as Takumi congratulates Tilla after she finishes her training. Panel. The Duke tells Clea he must return to the capital for business. Panel. The Duke gives a stern order to Takumi and Tilla about their training.